Okay. Hello, Missoula. Hello. Everybody for coming out tonight, spending your Saturday evening here, and listening to a message from, well, I was on the road last night in Spokane and saw this with Dr. Wallach, and as Vivian calls it, the legend. As you'll find out, he's been doing this for a lot of years, several messages like this. There's probably a reason why everybody came here tonight, not just to visit with friends. You came because you might have a health issue with yourself or friends.
Turn your voice up just a little bit.
A health issue. You came tonight because you might have a health issue with yourself, friends, or family. And you heard from a friend or on the radio this week or from a longevity associate that Dr. Wallach was coming to town, so you heard a little bit about the protocol, what he has to offer. And tonight he's going to present some information to you, and you're going to be pretty amazed at some of the things that he's discovered over the years and the information he's trying to get out to people. And at this point, Dr. Joel Wallach.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for preparing for me. I appreciate the snow from California, and so this would turn California into a mess, right? So I appreciate you being here on this grand evening. And I'm going to just ask a couple of questions so I know who I'm speaking to. How many of you have heard me speak before? Okay, great. Appreciate you being here. Also, how many of you are health providers? Anybody a health provider here? Okay, what do you do?
I'm an RN.
RN, good. I love nurses. They keep doctors from killing people. Okay, give her a hand. Okay. Okay, anybody else over here? I saw a hand over here. Back there, there's, okay, sir, what do you do? Chiropractic. Okay, chiropractic. We love you guys and gals. Okay, anybody over here? Okay, yes, sir?
Doctor Acupuncture.
I'm sorry, say again?
Doctor Acupuncture.
Acupuncturist, okay, super. 10,000-year-old profession, really good stuff. Anybody else? You notice there's almost never a medical doctor show up? Why? That's because they know everything. Just ask them. Okay, what we're going to do tonight is have a little fun at the same time, learn some very serious things. The thing we're going to do tonight is make a report card for the medical system. The goal here is to keep the A's, if there are any, and throw out the F's. That makes sense? Because they haven't done it themselves. They've really botched things up very badly. And people say, well, who are you? Why can you be a judge here or do something? Well, the thing that makes my view different is I have a degree in agriculture. In the animal industry, we don't have health insurance for animals like we do people. And if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for livestock, for instance, it'd be sticker shock for you. A hamburger would cost you $500 a pound. A dozen eggs would be $250 just to pay for the health care. So we learned a long time ago in the animal industry, we keep the price of animals and animal products down to where the average person could afford to eat them every day simply by eliminating diseases. We've been able to eliminate 900 different diseases, triple lifespans, just simply with vitamins and minerals. No stem cells, no genetically engineered proteins, no wonder drugs, no organ transplants. As a kid, it always seemed odd to me that we did that for animals and not for people. And again, to make a long story short, I got into ag school. Halfway through ag school, I decided I was going to start applying for veterinary school, so when the time came, am I a bad boy?
We can't hear you. We might need 2 mics on you. It's not on yet.
That better? Okay, thank you. Let's give Vivian a hand. Okay. Okay, thank you. This should be okay. And so halfway through ag school, I decided I was going to start practicing to apply for veterinary school, so when the real time came when I graduated ag school, I know what I was doing. Well, surprise, surprise, the first time I applied for veterinary school, halfway through ag school, got accepted. And so by the time I finished ag school, 2 years later, I was a graduate student, but I also had 2 years left in veterinary school. So I like pathology. So I started taking a lot of pathology courses, graduate courses, and comparative pathology, doing autopsies on humans and animals. And the first winter, as a graduate student, all the professors took off and left the graduates in charge of the various service areas. And my service area was pathology. And again, lo and behold, a case came to me in which it was the first mass die-off from pollution in the United States, and I got to write it up, and it became a very famous case. Did all the chemistry, it was just perfect. It was written up in medical journals and veterinary journals and international chemical journals. And that became the driving force of my life, that one study that just was sort of an accidental thing. Well, graduated veterinary school, went to Africa for a couple of years because I had worked with Marlin Perkins as a kid in the summer times. Remember the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show? I started working for him when I was 14 years old. It was one of my first jobs at the St. Louis Zoo with Marlin Perkins. I was 14 years old, and they had 11 show elephants. They started having elephant shows in the 1904 World's Fair, and lion and tiger shows, and chimpanzee shows. If you've ever been to the St. Louis Zoo during the summer, you know that. And the elephants had learned something. Now they team up, and the elephants would hold their bowel movements all day. They just wouldn't poop on, in the barn. So when they get on the stage, they make the first run around in circles, and this show went on 4 times a day, Monday through Friday, June, July, and August, and on Saturday and Sundays, 5 times a day. And when they get on the stage, they, the circus music, they go out on the stage a few times, they start twirling around, then they'd hook up again, trunk, tail kind of thing. And every other elephant, so they plotted this, every other elephant would poop on the stage. The one following them would pick up these bowling ball-sized manure balls and throw them out in the audience. And they would stand there and giggle and watch everybody fleeing, right? And so my job was to prevent that by manually removing these bowling ball-sized manure balls from their rectums 4 times a day, Monday through Friday, and 5 times a day on Saturday and Sunday. So that's my introduction to show business, right there. Well, 5 years later, when I was 19 years old, and these elephants are now 15 years old, you had to get deeper into your work. Yeehaw! Okay, so when I graduated veterinary school, I was already kind of 2/3 of the way through my postdoctoral fellowship in comparative pathology. Perkins had a job for me. And how many saw that there's the western black rhino is now extinct in western Africa? Did you see that? Yeah. Well, back in 1964 when I graduated veterinary school, Perkins sent me to Africa for 2 years to work with a white rhino in Central and Southern Africa. There was 250 left, and he set me up in this conservation thing where I was supposed to catch them, and I caught 200 of the 250, sent them back. So if you see a white rhino and an elephant, and elephants in the zoo, you either see them as offspring of the ones that I caught or the ones that I caught. Okay? Well, 2/3 of the way through this project, I caught 200 out of the 250. Perkins had gotten a grant from the National Institutes of Health to study pollution in the zoo animals. And the pollution in zoo animals, it was a great idea. How many remember the old Welsh coal miners taking the canaries down in the mine? Remember that? And the canaries would be more sensitive to the carbon monoxide and methane than the humans, and they would fall off the perch and die long before the men were going to die so that they could get out. They see the canary drop off, it was time to run. Well, Perkins had this great idea. Well, here's a zoo in a big city that had 400, 500, 600 species of animals in there, and they would die from natural causes. And usually, if they're in good shape, they'd make mounted specimens for museums and things. But if they weren't in good shape, they would just incinerate them, cremate them. And he said, well, we should be able to get some information to see if pollution had anything to do with their causes of death. Well, since I was a comparative pathologist, and as out of courtesy, having worked with Perkins, I used to give him copies of all my scientific articles that I'd written. And so he remembered that I had done all this with the first case of pollution mass die-off in the United States. Well, he said, we can take 10 years to train somebody. Well, here's a guy, Wallach, he's got a degree in agriculture. He's a veterinarian, he's a pathologist. And this project was a compilation of 3 departments, the Shaw's Botanical Gardens in St. Louis County, the St. Louis Zoological Park, and the Biology Department of Washington University. So my training kind of fit in all those things. So he called me back to work on that project. It was a 10-year project. I'd done over 20,000 autopsies, some 17,500 on over 454 species of animals, not all from the St. Louis Zoo. Zoos all over North America, including Mexico and Canada, all the United States. Little bitty ones they would freeze, and they'd ship them overnight, mail to me, and the big ones I'd have to get on a plane with a chainsaw and an axe and go to the zoo where they died and do the autopsy on them. And then there were 3,000 people who had died in close proximity to these zoos. They were also autopsied and checked for pollution problems. Well, the book that came out of that's a 1,200-page book. It's in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. And the whole purpose of that book is to be a reference for things that are going on now, comparing the causes of death from pollution and nutritional deficiencies 50 years ago compared to now. And so that book is used as a reference for that purpose. Well, because of the publicity that was associated with that project, I was invited to speak to medical groups, nursing groups, pharmacy groups, dental groups, to give them lectures on nutrition as part of their continuing education so they could keep their licenses. Well, I was an abysmal failure. I was an abysmal failure at getting doctors interested in nutrition. They put their arm around me and say, Wallach, that's all kind of interesting, but it doesn't pay for CAT scans. Okay? And so I went back to school and became a naturopathic physician, graduated from NCM in Portland, Oregon, practiced for 12 years. My patients affectionately said that I treated them like dogs, but they got better. And the reason was, of course, in the waiting room, I had my veterinary degree, which is so big. It was like 3 times as big as my naturopathic degree. And so they'd see that veterinary degree first, and their eyes would get very big, and they say, am I in the right place? And so, yes. So what you're going to get is 33 years of information using veterinary nutritional formulas on human patients. That's what you're going to get from me. And then together we're going to give report cards to the medical system, okay? So we're going to kind of do 2 things at once. I'm going to use overheads to kind of share stuff with you, because if I were just to speak to you without showing you these things, you would think I was sniffing glue, because some of this stuff is so outrageous. If I didn't show you the source, you'd say, yeah, right, Wallach, that's impossible. So here we go. Hold your questions at the end, please. And here we go. This came out, a cover article, Time Magazine, December 2008. The sorry state of American health. Despite advances in medicine, Americans are less healthy than we used to be, and the next generation, our kids, may be worse off. Now, there's 2 pieces here you have to know. Number 1, we spend more money for health care each year than all the other nations in the world put together. Each year, Americans spend more money for health care than all the other nations in the world put together. And yet, our health is getting worse. What they're saying here is our kids are not going to live as long as us, because they were born into a bad system, where many of us are old enough we were born into a good system, and halfway through, somewhere along the line, it got bad. Well, our kids are being born into a bad system between pollution and food that's not good and so on. And so they're saying, experts are now saying, that our kids are not going to live as long as us. And many of you in this room will be standing at gravesite burying your children and your grandchildren if we don't change. If you just keep doing what you're doing, it's not going to be good. My favorite Nobel Prize winner, Albert Einstein, said many global things that are unimpeachable. But my favorite is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So we must change. We must change. The medical system has failed us terribly, and so we have to kind of take over here. Okay? Here we go. Now, one of the most important parts of a human's life, and in any vertebrate's life for that matter, whether it's a hummingbird or a snake or an elephant, giraffe or a human, doesn't matter, is the first third of the pregnancy. This is where you go from a sperm and an egg to a finished product. After the first third of that pregnancy, the rest of it is just growth time. The individual forms in the first third of the pregnancy. Now, we've eliminated every birth defect that you can name, and 3 times that many you can't name, in animals with preconception nutrition. And repeat that, because you heard me but you didn't hear me. We've eliminated every birth defect that you can name, and 3 times that many that you can't name, in the animals, in the animal industry, by simply giving the females preconception nutrition, perfect nutrition, before she gets pregnant. In humans, we let everybody run around eating Pop-Tarts and Egos and Mountain Dew and whatever it is they're eating, and then they miss 2 periods when they get old enough to have their own family. They say, oh, I might be pregnant. Well, the embryo is already damaged at that point. We do a much better job for pigs and rats and hamsters than we do for ourselves. And so there should not be a single human baby, certainly in America, born with a birth defect. It's totally preventable if we get every embryo before they're conceived through the pregnancy that they're developed in from the time they're born until they're old enough to have their own families. We have to start somewhere, so we're going to start in the middle here for some people now because we're not embryos anymore. You have to stop that. You do that again, I'll squirt you with a squirt gun. Okay, she's sitting here cracking her knuckles. Sheesh. You have arthritis already.
She needs you.
You're not going to get me if you keep cracking your knuckles. Okay. This is our goal here. Is that the 3-month mark is to have a perfect embryo. And the OBGYNs have failed us terribly. They have failed us. Personally, what I'd like to see is a system of laws, because there are no laws covering this, either ethical laws or legislative laws. If it were up to me, every time that a pregnancy winds up with a child that's born with a defect of some kind, the OBGYN should go to jail for 25 years to life. Now, by the time that the 1000th doctor goes to jail, every doctor runs around saying, "I've discovered that we can prevent birth defects by giving everybody vitamins and minerals." Because they wouldn't want to be the 1000th and first to go to jail. But that's not going to happen because they're too powerful. So we're wasting time and money and energy hoping and praying that they'll figure it out, or that by our petitions they will change their ways. So we just have to do it. So it's now your responsibility, because you're not ignorant anymore. You're all smart, but you're ignorant because everybody in this room did not know that you can prevent all birth defects with vitamins and minerals before conception. Well, now you know. And so you have a huge responsibility. Do not depend on the medical system, particularly OBGYNs have failed us. They do not get 30 minutes of nutrition in 14 years of medical school. They don't even get a test on that. They don't even get a test on that 30 minutes. The most important thing in that embryo's life is nutrition. Okay, so we have to take control here. Just to kind of put this in perspective, this came out a month ago, October 4th, 2011. In ranking of newborn deaths, we're number 41. It's the USA shame. Shame on us! Shame, shame, shame on the OBGYNs, because there's 40 other countries who do a better job in having live births and babies born without birth defects in first-year survivability. Shame on us. We're spending more money for health care than all the other nations of the world put together, and this is what we get? You wouldn't tolerate this in any other industry. This is your kids and grandkids that are being affected here. And you're paying the price not only in misery, but also in money. Because you're the ones that have to pay for the OBGYN's negligence and mistakes. Now you say, Wallach, you're kind of rough on those doctors, aren't you? And my response is, I couldn't do it if they didn't give me the material, could I? Now, Down syndrome is a very simple disease to prevent. It's not a genetic disease. It's a simple nutritional deficiency of the embryo in the first couple of minutes of life. If the mother has perfect nutrition prior to conception, there'll never be another Down syndrome baby born. Down syndrome in humans is trisomy 21, where there's 3 chromosomes instead of 2. This just happens to be from a chimpanzee, where it's trisomy 22. This is totally preventable. Totally 100% preventable. It's not an accident. It is a nutritional deficiency of the embryo just moments after the egg is fertilized by the sperm. If the mother's deficient, you have a high probability of getting these problems. Now in 1977, being transferred around on this big project from Perkins, I went to various zoos and so forth. Well, in 1977, I was at the Yerkes Primate Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and Emory University, and I discovered the cause, prevention, and cure of cystic fibrosis. This is 1977, 34 years ago. I discovered the cause, prevention, and cure of cystic fibrosis. This is one of my research monkeys, and this is me when I was a young man. But I wanted to show you this. This was a news release by Emory University back in March of '78, several months after the discovery was made and confirmed. You see the name there, Dr. Joel Wallach, that's me. And they fired me. They fired me because they knew that cystic fibrosis was caused by a genetic defect, and they felt that I was sniffing some glue or did something really crazy to be able to falsely say that it was caused by a nutritional deficiency during pregnancy. So instead of saying, well, that's kind of wild, Wallach, you have to prove it to us some more, they just fired me. Because they didn't want to interrupt the income stream to study genetics. Are you getting a picture here? Yeah. Now, how many of you heard of muscular dystrophy? Now, we've known the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy for 60 years. We've known the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy for 60 years. I'm going to say it one more time. We've known the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy for 60 years. Now, anybody here ever work with cattle? Yep. Okay. What do you ever heard of white muscle disease? Okay. What causes white muscle disease? It's a deficiency of what? Selenium, a trace mineral called selenium. Very good. Now, are you a doctor, sir? Are you a veterinarian?
No, just a farmer.
Just a farmer. Now, you know more, as just a farmer, you know more about muscular dystrophy than all the medical doctors in the world. Let's give him a hand. I like that. Remember, we don't have health insurance for animals, do we? And when you have a calf with white muscle disease, you can give them some selenium, and it goes away. If you give the female, the cow, selenium before she has that calf, you'll never have another calf with white muscle disease. Well, white muscle disease in calves is muscular dystrophy in humans. Muscular dystrophy in humans is white muscle disease in calves. And we've been curing white muscle disease in calves and muscular dystrophy in human beings for over 30 years in my own practice. But you do one here, and you know, then 2 years later you do one there, and the doctor say, well, yeah, who knows about whether the diagnosis is correct. We found a group of people in Indiana called the Amish. In 3 counties, there's no selenium in these 3 counties as soil surveys by Purdue University's Department of Agriculture. Not me, Purdue University. And in these 3 counties, almost half the kids are born with muscular dystrophy. Now, what the medical system says, I'm telling you, this is what the medical system says. They write it up in their scientific journals. The reason why there's so much muscular dystrophy in these Amish communities in these 3 counties is because they just interbreed. The fathers have sex with the girls, and the mothers have sex with the boys, and the brothers have sex with their sisters, and they just have no morals, and they're all interbreeding, and that's why they have so many kids born with muscular dystrophy. Now, I went and lived with them for weeks. That's not true. They're very, 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 very religious people. Dutch Reformed Church. I mean, they are religious, believe me. And it's because there's no selenium in the soil there. Now, it's kind of interesting that they don't have white muscle disease in their calves, in their goats, and their sheep, and their horses, and pigs, and chickens. You know why? Because they supplement with selenium for their animals. But they don't supplement for selenium for themselves because the doctors tell them, oh, it's genetic. Just eat well, you're going to get everything you need. Shame on those doctors. They should all be put in jail. And you're going to see why in just a moment. Okay? They should all be put in jail for that kind of stuff. And you can see why they call muscular dystrophy white muscle disease in animals. This is the thigh muscle of a teenage boy with muscular dystrophy. And so a farmer out there not knowing what this is, he'd say, oh, this looks like white muscle disease. This is a normal thigh muscle from a teenage boy. Okay? And usually with muscular dystrophy, the calves are much bigger than the thighs because the thighs are what wastes away. It's called Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And the interesting thing about this is this part of the anatomy in humans is the round steak and the rump roast in animals. So when that goes away, you can't make money. You're losing money. You feed that cow and you have a calf like that, you're done that year. You're not going to make any money. You're broke. And so we learned very quickly how to solve the problem by giving selenium in the feed to the animals in these places, and they don't get the disease anymore. In human beings, doctors still falsely tell you, criminally tell you, just eat well, you get everything you need. It is absolutely not true. Okay? And here, this kid is fixable with selenium supplementation. Now, And remember, every birth defect you can name. Let's just look at something simple like a belly button hernia. How many have ever seen a belly button hernia in a baby? Okay, now this is caused by a zinc deficiency in the embryo in the last couple of days of the first month of pregnancy. You can see here it's kind of a banny egg size belly button hernia. The skin's over it. And in this early stage, you can actually take these kids, lay them on their back, and take your finger 4 or 5 times a day and rub that and irritate it, and the scar tissue will actually close over. Probably won't need surgery. Grandmas used to know that. Well, here's another belly button hernia, but this one, the mother was deficient in zinc in the last couple of days of the first month of pregnancy and for the first 10 days of the second month of pregnancy. There's no skin over this. The stomach and some of the intestines and the spleen are hanging out. And this is a life-threatening situation, certainly is a surgical case. This third one, the mother was deficient in zinc in the last couple of days of first month of pregnancy and for the entire second month of pregnancy. And so the liver and the stomach and all the intestines and spleen are hanging out. And this is a very dangerous operation because you see the intestines are distended with gas and so forth. So this is a very precarious situation, very life-threatening, and certainly if the baby survives, it's a surgical case. All totally preventable with 50 cents worth of nutrients every day prior to conception. It's that simple. Now you know more than all OBGYNs. See how long it took you to learn that? Now, you've all seen kids with cleft palate, cleft lip. These are caused by deficiencies of nutrients in the earliest stages of pregnancy. I'm sure you can find a good Christian surgeon to donate his time here to close these kids' lips up and their palates. They're not going to be beautiful because they're not going to get 14 plastic surgeries, right? But they will be able to suck on a straw and speak intelligibly. All right? Now, you can go to one of these Save the Children programs and get the $250 each for these kids to pay for the anesthesia, the disposable instruments, and the suture material and so forth. But all of this is preventable with preconception nutrition. Now, how many of you heard of autism, ADD or ADHD? Now, when I was a kid 72 years ago, there was no such thing. That's because we were all weaned off of mama's breast milk onto the cultural diets of where we came from. All 4 of my grandparents came from the Ukraine, Eastern Europe along the Russian border, and they were beet farmers and cattle farmers. So I was weaned off my mother's breast milk onto eggs and beets and sweet potatoes and cheese and milk with a little bit of coffee in it. And everything turned out okay, I think. Okay? But today, well, let's say 30 years ago, it was 1 out of 150,000 American kids had autism and ADD and ADHD. Today it's 1 out of 115. And they're saying by 2025 it's going to be 1 out of 50. Now here's the scary part about this. If it's 1 out of 50, just about every one of your elected officials, regardless of party, is going to be autistic. If you think you have problems now, wait until all your elected officials are autistic on top of everything else. This has nothing to do with vaccinations. Autism has nothing to do with vaccinations. Surely, vaccinations can cause catastrophic brain damage in a handful of people, but it doesn't cause autism and ADD and ADHD. You can't make that stretch. Autism and ADD and ADHD are nutritional deficiencies of the brain. The brain requires more than just sugar. Doctors say, oh, the brain is full of sugar. Well, that's true, but the brain needs all 90 essential nutrients. The brain needs all 90 essential nutrients, and if it doesn't have something, your psychologist, your friendly psychiatrist will say, oh, you have a chemical imbalance, which is AKA nutritional deficiency, right? So you take the 90 essential nutrients, you stay away from sugar, and it all goes away. But Prozac and Ritalin are not nutrients. Okay? I've been dealing with these kids since 1970 by the thousands. All this stuff is totally reversible with supplementation of all the 90 essential nutrients and keeping them away from sugar. I also want you to think about it. All prenatal programs, with the exception of mine, do not have omega-3 essential fatty acids. They have capsules with folic acids, which is one of the lawsuits I've lodged against the FDA, to be able to say that supplementation during pregnancy of folic acid can reduce the risk of spinal neural tubal defects, right? Spina bifida. Before I sued them in federal court and won, thank you, You can only say that eating foods rich in folic acid can prevent these neural tube defects. I had to sue them to be able to say you can supplement and guarantee you're going to get enough folic acid to prevent that. I had to sue them to be able to say the truth. Okay? Now, as I said earlier, we're #1 in obesity in the world. So we finally made #1 in something. We're #1 in obesity in the world, and 44% of our kids under the age of 12 are obese. This has nothing to do with lack of exercise and too much screen time. It has nothing to do with eating too much. It has nothing to do with eating too much. Now, that's why we're the #1 obese nation in the world, because the doctor's theory was people just eat too much screen time, not enough exercise. Well, following their recipe, we became the #1 obese nation in the world. So obviously, their recipe, their theory was wrong. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome or a different result. So this is where we must change, because their theory is a triple F. Now, this is what doctors think causes obesity. They even had McDonald's take the toy out of the Happy Meal. How dumb is that? How many calories are in the toy? I mean, these guys have 14 years of medical school and they think there's calories in the toy. They take the toy out. That'll fix it, right? Now, here's the first clue I'm going to give you into what causes obesity. This little girl, 3 years old, was on Good Morning America. She was written up in every newspaper in America. You might have even gotten it here in Montana. 3 years old, she eats light bulbs, she's eating aluminum cans, she eats dirt, and she eats wood and all this kind of stuff. And the doctors who are taking care of her in Terre Haute, Indiana, are very ignorant. They said she has a rare condition called pica. Well, every pregnant woman has pica. How many of you ladies have had babies? Raise your hand. Okay, great. Congratulations. Now, how many of you ladies, when you were pregnant, had cravings? Yeah, well, this is called pica, because the embryo is stealing minerals from you faster than you're taking them in. And so you want pickles and ice cream. In the old days, women would go out in the moonlit night and eat dirt and eat corn starch. And even Grandma knew about this, right? The dog would go out and eat grass. You say, Grandma, why is that dog eating grass? And she say, well, he's missing something. I mean, you've all heard that when you were a kid, right? And so they call this a rare genetic disease. Right. Okay. She's just missing some minerals. Now, is there anybody in here who's ever worked with horses? Anybody work with horses? Okay, what do you call it when a horse chews on the fence? Cribbing. Cribbing. Okay, it's called cribbing. How do you get rid of cribbing in a horse other than shooting them? You feed them minerals. You give them minerals. Within 3 to 5 days, they stop chewing on the fence. For those of you who have never seen cribbing, this is what it looks like. You can see where the horse is here. This is a little Amish farm in Shipshewana, Indiana. You can see where the horses were chewing on that rail in this pen inside the barn, in this stall. But why did those horses really go gangbusters there? Well, that's where the farmer, I asked him if that was any place special. He said, yeah, I stand there and I count my horses and look at them for a while to make sure they're okay before I hitch them up on the buggy, and that's where I hold my hands. Well, his sweaty hands, after doing all that work, the salt from his sweaty hands gets in that wood, and that's where the horses dig in. Okay? Now, the reason why we give snacks to people who come to visit our house is, over 100 years ago, it was recognized very quickly that the guest kids would chew on your best furniture. So instead of letting them chew on the legs of your best furniture, you give them a cookie. Now, how many of you heard that the government now is going to start taking away your kids and your grandkids if they're 25 to 50 pounds overweight? Okay, it's coming. It's already started. The Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, Harvard Medical School, and many other medical schools are now recommending to the government that parents do such a bad job, they want the government to take your babies away from you if they're overweight by 25 pounds or more. I've been a consultant on certain cases with Lars. This one, this young kid here in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, his mother took him in to see the pediatrician when he was 5 years old because he's 150 pounds overweight. The pediatrician gave her a Frisbee with his name, telephone number, and office address on it. Said, take him out in the park and run him around. Throw the Frisbee around, make him exercise. She did. 2 years later, he goes back in, he's 250 pounds overweight, and so on. And here he is, 14 years old, he's 430 pounds overweight. Well, this time, the pediatrician got scared, called the social services. They arrest her and take the kid away from her. He's a ward of the state, and they do stomach bypass and all that kind of stuff. Now, who should have been arrested? The pediatrician should have been arrested, because she did the right thing. She went to the doctor, who's supposed to know what to do for kids with problems, and he says, exercise the kid with his advertising frisbee? The pediatrician should have gone to jail here, not the mother, because she sought help. She sought professional help. So beware, they're coming after your kids if they're a little overweight. We're going to have to have some battles here. Now, how many of you have heard of diabetes? Anybody here ever hear of diabetes? Type 2 diabetes? Well, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset type 2 diabetes. You can't call it that anymore. It was originally called adult onset type 2 diabetes because only people over age 50 got it. Well, today, 50% of the people with type 2 diabetes are below 25. Some of them are born with type 2 diabetes now. This is a simple mineral deficiency disease. It's not genetic. We've known how to prevent and cure this disease for 60 years. We've known how to prevent and cure type 2 diabetes for over 60 years. Let me say that one more time. It's not a genetic disease. We've known how to prevent and cure type 2 diabetes for over 60 years. It's a simple mineral deficiency disease. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but basically what you do is before conception, during pregnancy, from the moment the baby's born, we all need to get the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for body weight. And as the baby grows, the amounts have to go up because it's based on body weight, right? If you do that, we can make Missoula, Montana, the first type 2 diabetes-free town in 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks. It's that simple. We can make, no, you got to hold it until the end here. I told you, no questions until the end. I have something from memory too. This is so simple it's scary. This is so simple it is scary. Now, to do this is going to cost about $3 a day per person. That's half or a third the cost of an espresso latte, mocha, polka, doka, loca, schmoka. Now, why won't doctors do this? Well, if you look on the other end of the scale, if you follow the doctor's method of managing diabetes instead of getting rid of it, you as a diabetic patient over 25 years are worth $4 million to the medical community. There are no laws requiring them to cure you, either ethical laws or legal legislative laws that require them to cure you, and there's a cure available. And so they don't, because they make more money in treating you and managing the disease as opposed to getting rid of it. So now you know more. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they're not criminals and just say they're ignorant and don't know because they only had 30 minutes of nutrition and 14 years of medical school. But I can't imagine they don't know because they read the same journals I do. Okay? And so we're going to have to take over here. This is an F minus, 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 minus. If there's anything lower than an F10 minus, that's what they got here on diabetes. There should not be a single American and anybody in the industrialized world with diabetes. We can get rid of it in 2 weeks. It's that quick. Same principle as when you have iron deficiency anemia, you just give iron, it goes away. You don't give a bone marrow transplant. But that's what doctors would like to do if you'd let them. And people always say, well, Wallach, aren't you kind of rough on doctors? Well, I couldn't do that if they didn't give me the material, could I? In our heart of hearts, we'd like to believe that doctors are altruistic and they do these things because they believe it's good for us and they want to help us and so on. Well, in 1997, a study by the Health Insurance Association of America found that 75% of insurance fraud, which is a federal crime, is committed by providers, which is a code word for doctors. This was an anonymous survey, so 58% of the doctors responding to the survey felt comfortable enough to admit that they lie to get insurers to pay for procedures they don't even do. A U.S. Senate committee, back in October, a month ago, October 2011, a Senate committee, U.S. Senate committee, accuses companies of gaming Medicare. They're talking about home health services, they're talking about hospitals and emergency rooms, they're talking about clinics where there's multiple doctors in a clinic. And basically what happens is this: if you go in there for a strain, and your ankle's all puffed up and black and blue because you got some blood in there and everything is painful, they'll take an x-ray and they'll say, you know, we need to have an expert look at this because we're just not quite sure. So we're going to check you into the hospital tonight. Instead of sending you home with an ice pack on your ankle and have you see your doctor tomorrow, we're going to put you in the hospital. Oh my gosh, we need to put you in a CAT scan because we have to see if there's microfractures in there. And they take something that should have been a $200 bill to $40,000 because you have insurance, you have Medicaid, you have Medicare. And these doctors, they've learned in the Senate committee, will bill 8 different agencies to pay them for doing the one service. They bill everybody they can and get paid by 8 different services for doing one thing on you. Now that's fraud. Now you do that, you go to jail, but they get a walk. Doesn't that make you feel warm and fuzzy? You're supporting the medical community? It's bad enough that even the U.S. senators can figure it out. That was a joke. Okay. I know, it took a while. Okay, let's look at this a different way. Let's look at outcomes here to see, well, you know, with all the nastiness that goes out in the medical system, maybe there's some good here. Well, let's see how long we live. If everybody in America dies at age 3 months, there's not going to be a next generation, is there? But if everybody lives to be 150, that would be an A+, wouldn't it? So let's have a look. In 1990, the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, a federal agency that tracks these kind of things, looked at the top 32 industrialized nations. You remember I said industrialized nations, not the top 32 nations, but the top 32 industrialized nations. Japan came in #1 in longevity at 79.1. The French came in 11th at 75.9. We came in 17th at 75. This is an F because we spend more money for health care than all the other nations of the world combined annually. We come in 17th. And you wouldn't tolerate that in any other industry, would you? Let's have a look. 10 years later, they redid it. 10 years later, they redid it. So in 2000, the same agency, only this time the World Health Organization jumped in. So it was the Center for Disease Control again and the World Health Organization. Japan remained #1, but they dropped from 79.1 down to 74.5. The French moved up from 11th to 3rd, but they dropped from 75.9 down to 73.1. And this movement by the French from 11th to 3rd is called by American medical doctors the French paradox. They call it the French paradox because the French consume more fat per person than any other culture on earth. Ladies, can you imagine a French chef cooking in canola oil and margarine? No, they cook everything in butter and cream and lard and eggs, all the stuff we're not supposed to eat, right? And yet they moved up from 11th to 3rd in longevity. By contrast, fat is the Antichrist in America. Next to the devil, there's nothing worse that anybody can figure out than fat. Okay? I mean, there's entrepreneurs that have come up with a whole anti-fat thing. There's egg beaters, get egg white omelets, right? And there's all these soy milk and rice dream and all this kind of stuff. And there's pho cheese, you know, it's really wild stuff here. And if you can't get your blood cholesterol down below 200, oh, I don't want that. I want a bottle. That'll get knocked over. I want a bottle. You want to take that with you? Please take it with you. I see disaster. Thank you. Okay. And she's trying to be nice and helpful. But I appreciate that. But when you have an open glass like that, you know the odds are it's going to get dumped on my material. I just know it. Okay. All right. Murphy never dies. Very good. Murphy's Law. Whatever can happen will happen. All right. And so did you know that there's 12 companies that make cholesterol-lowering drugs in America, 12 pharmaceutical companies? Each one of them makes a profit every month of $2 billion to $5 billion. Each one of these 12 companies makes $2 to $5 billion profit every month in America because you are so paranoid about cholesterol. Well, with all that, in that same 10-year period, we dropped from 17th in longevity to 24th. The system sucks. The recipe sucks. That's an F minus, 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 minus. Now here's what even makes it worse. Listen up here. This is what makes it worse. There's not a single disease that is caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. People even stopped chewing their gum when I said that. They were so shocked. There's not a single disease that you can show me that is caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. You've wasted your time, money, and energy worrying about your cholesterol. There's not a single disease that's caused by elevated blood. Show me one. There isn't one. If you read the words carefully, they say elevated blood cholesterol is a risk factor for heart disease. Doesn't cause it, it's a risk factor. Now, let me tell you. If you have elevated blood cholesterol, whatever that means, and I'll give you a rationale here in a second for that statement. If you have elevated blood cholesterol, it means you either have diabetes or you have low thyroid, hypothyroidism. You can have deficiency or ratio problems between omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. You can have deficiencies of chromium and vanadium, which are two trace minerals that control blood fats and blood sugar. You can have deficiencies of niacin. Remember, the health food industries and little health food store owners and herbalists and naturopathic doctors and all these people have been yelling about niacin forever for lowering cholesterol, right? Well, the doctors, medical doctors, oh, that's all quackery and charlatanism. That can't be. Well, now the pharmaceutical industry came out with Niaspan, which is just a time-release niacin, vitamin B3, time-release, and they charge your insurance company $150 for one little bottle, and you can buy about the same number of capsules of niacin for $8. Are you getting a picture here, folks? Okay. Okay. This came out in 2005, 5 years later. They didn't wait 10 years this time. It was 5 years later. And for the entire summer of 2005, June, July, and August, this was on the stands. It was like $5. It was a half-inch thick special issue on health. And in page 10, right-hand column, 2/3 of the way down, there was this part of a paragraph. America has built the world's highest tech medical system. I don't think you can argue with that. They got robots now doing hip surgeries, heart surgeries, prostate cancer surgeons. Robots do this now. Why is that? Well, that's because all the insurance companies got together and they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to engineering schools like MIT and so forth to convert automobile assembly robots into surgical robots. Now, why did they do that? That's because doctors were drunk so much. Let's give Vivian a hand. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. That's because, according to Harvard Medical School, and Lucien Lepay, the director of their Department of Public Health, said, and they did a survey, a blind survey, 52% of medical doctors are intoxicated on alcohol, street drugs, or prescription drugs during their waking day. So you go to an emergency room, 50% of the time you're going to a doctor who's gorked out on something. Okay? And so that's why they cut off the wrong leg, or they botch up a surgery. And so they had the robots do this because the robots don't get drunk. So they don't have to give so many settlements, right? That's why they did that. Well, America has built the world's highest tech medical system, and for whatever reason, you can't argue with it. There's a comma here, though, and it says, yet the nation, America, now ranks 46th in life expectancy behind Japan, Singapore, Canada, and virtually all of Europe and Scandinavia. So in a 15-year period, went from 17th in longevity to 46th following the doctor's recipe. That's an F minus, 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 minus. Okay? You would not tolerate this in any other industry. Why would anybody want to listen to anything they had to say? Oh, my doctor is so wonderful. I get free samples every once in a while. Ha ha ha. It gets worse. This was a full-page article in the USA Today, February 2007. I had to chop it up a little bit to get it on the 8.5 by 11 sheet because this was a full-page newspaper article. You can tell by the title there's something interesting going to happen here. Patient, protect thyself. The data I'm going to share with you comes from the Journal of the American Medical Association, the most prestigious medical journal, certainly in America, maybe the world. Also the Center for Disease Control, again, that federal agency out of Atlanta, Georgia. And what they said was this. Each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their patients in their workplace. Each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their patients, their customers in their workplace. They don't even get an OSHA ticket. 5.8 million in hospitals, 9.2 million in the private offices and clinics, and they get a walk. People keep going to them. Now, what would happen in the World Trade Tower, the World Trade Tower construction site? What would happen if 10 plumbers a day were being killed? OSHA would shut that thing down in one day, and it would be closed until they figured out why it was happening. I mean, people would be fined millions of dollars, right, left, and center. This goes on year after year after year after year, and we just keep paying the increased prices every year. Why do you do it? It's an insane process. You wouldn't do that in any other industry. Now, one of our associates gave me this. This is a story from 5 years ago in an Orlando, Florida hospital. This is one of the injuries. You know, killed, injured, and infected. This is one of the injuries. This gal here, 28 years old, goes in to have her first baby. Oh, that's the Russian version. She goes in to have her first baby. And when she wakes up from anesthesia, you know she's in trouble right away. She wakes up from anesthesia. And they had cut her arms off at the elbows, and they cut her legs off at the groin. She says, oh my gosh, my baby. And they said, your baby's perfect, don't worry about it. And she said, well, what'd you do to me? And they said, well, you're going to have to sue us to find out. So she and her husband sued the doctor in the hospital. They found out the doctor was drunk. One of those drunk doctors. And he read her chart wrong. Instead of delivering her baby, he cut her arms and legs off. Because he thought she was the one that was in there for flesh-eating strep. He went out and played golf. Never had his license suspended. Never lost 1 penny of income. And this is 18 months later. She'll never be able to hold her baby's face in her hands. She'll never be able to wipe her own bottom or eat with a fork. Because the doctor was drunk. On duty. Now, he's done that a second time for a woman who went in for kidney stones. I don't know if he has a thing against women. I don't know what his thing is. But this guy is really a bad negative there in Orlando, Florida, in this hospital. Well, if I were her daddy or her husband, I'd make me a color placard, about 3 foot by 8 foot of that. I'd make maybe 100 of them. And I'd put a thing in here, Dr. So-and-so did this to my daughter, my wife. And I want you to boycott this hospital until they fire him. I think by the time a week goes by, I'll get 100 people to be carrying that plaque around with me, right? And so there has to be consequences to these things. If people say, oh, isn't that a shame? And then go on about their business, just like this Penn State thing. Report it, nobody does anything. I mean, if I walk into a shower and a coach is having sex with a 10-year-old boy, I'd knock his lights out, right? I'm not going to go tattle on him. He's going to wish I would have. Okay? So there has to be consequences. Now, these two ladies were killed in a private office, doctor's office, for having liposuction instead of using my weight loss plan. They decided getting their fat sucked out was easier. And the doctor kills them in his office. Their doctor, like many booming cosmetic surgery field, wasn't board certified, but there's no law to stop him. Because doctors can do anything. There's no limit to what a doctor can do. They can do everything. By legislation, we have allowed them to be able to do anything. Okay? And all he did, just like this previous girl that the arms and legs were cut off, the doctor gives the survivors his card and says, call my insurance man and you guys settle. And he goes on and does it to somebody else. There's no consequences. The system sucks and we have to change it. This came out in 1998. Again, the study by the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, a federal agency. And what they said was that each year in America, medical doctors infect 2 million customers, 2 million patients in hospitals each year. They go in for non-invasive things like ultrasounds, CAT scans, stress tests, x-rays, that kind of stuff. And they infect 2 million of these people. Of those 2 million that are infected each year, 90,000 die. 90,000 die every year because the doctor doesn't wash his hands. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard of a farrowing barn. This is where pigs go to have their babies. And when pigs have their babies, it's called farrowing. I don't know the derivation of that, but it's called farrowing. And in a farrowing barn, you could have 100 farrowing pens, 100 sows, 100 female pigs having their babies there in these individual pens. They're little individual suites. And if you don't work and live on that farm, you go in that barn. You don't even go in the pen with the pigs, but you walk in front of them. You got to go and take a shower with disinfectant soap in a special clean room. You got to tear open a bag and put on disinfected coveralls and boots, gloves, mask, hat. And in front of each pig pen, this farrowing pen, is a 4-inch deep, 2 foot by 2 foot, 4-inch deep pan of disinfectant with a brush. You're supposed to step in that, take this brush and wash off your boots before you go in front of the next pen to prevent dragging infection from one place to the next. And then perhaps lose these baby pigs and their mamas from infection. By contrast, I want you to think about it. These doctors, both male and females, wear the same white coat room to room to room. Wear the same shoes from room to room to room. Same trousers, same skirts, same pantyhose, room to room to room. They wear their surgical scrubs down into the cafeteria where they sit on a chair where some baby had poopy diapers. E. coli. Then they go back and do surgery. Or they go from room to room to room, whether it's a private practice or the hospital, they go from room to room to room. And you look at their jackets, they're not snow white like they've just been recently bleached. You can look at them, they have blood and poop and pee and pus and snot all over those things. They're dragging this from room to room to room. We treat our pigs better than we do our people. That's why this happens. So we got to take control here. We actually have a skin sanitizer called PureWorks. If you have to have, I hope you don't, but if you have to have somebody go to a hospital, I want you to stand in the doorway with PureWorks, say, strip to your naked skin and spray them all over with PureWorks before they can come in the room. And you'll save your loved one. Well, I couldn't do that. He's a doctor. You better do it because he is a doctor. It gets worse. This came out last year, almost exactly last year, November 2010. Hospital care failed for some patients. That's kind of vanilla. This is a little scarier. Results of Medicare study alarming. There's nothing more scary than alarming. Okay? Now, the study was done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. In this case, it is essentially the auditor for Medicare. What they said was that each month in America, medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients each month in hospitals. Medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients each month in hospitals. We still keep bringing our loved ones to the hospital. Because in our minds and our hearts, we hope and pray that this is a place of safety and health. But statistics shows that it's not. I remember 60 Minutes, you know, every Sunday afternoon. How many remember Andy Rooney? Now, he retired a couple of months ago at age 92. A month later, he was dead. People, oh, wasn't it terrible he passed away? Well, he didn't pass away. He was murdered. Now, I've read 15 of these articles, online, newspapers all over the country, and every one of them says the same thing. Andy Rooney was killed by complications of a minor procedure. He was killed by complications of a minor procedure? Well, why don't they tell you what this minor procedure was? Well, I guarantee you here's why. You ever heard of colonoscopic exams where they put a garden hose up your rump and they look around in there? Yeah. I'm sure they say, look, Andy, you're 92 years old. You better let us check you out for colon cancer. They put this garden hose up his rump and the surgeon's drunk, starts poking around in there, punches it through his intestines, and he dies of peritonitis, an infection of his belly cavity. If he just stayed away from him, he'd still be alive. But they talked him into this minor procedure that we do every day and is safe. Right. Wound up killing him. Sure got quiet in here. Now, if they can kill an Andy Rooney with his high profile, see, in these articles they say, oh, you know, he was such a curmudgeon. His whole thing was to complain about things, right? And we can see him up in heaven complaining that he can't rest, he can't sleep because the harps that the angels are playing is too loud. But that's not what Andy Rooney would complain about. Andy Rooney would complain about being talked into a minor procedure that wound up killing him. That's what he would complain about. Okay, this came out in August of this year, Newsweek magazine cover article. Newsweek magazine cover article. Now this guy is obviously not anesthetized. Here's 5 surgeons ready to stick their scalpel into him, because if they stick the scalpel into him and he dies, they get paid the full amount of the procedure. So they can't wait to stick you, because then if you die, then they get paid the full amount. If you die from anesthesia before they stuck their knife in you, they don't get paid. So they want to stick their knife in you as quickly as possible. The one word that will save your life in a hospital. We go to the centerfold, and this was August of 2011. You go to the centerfold, and remember, this is not me. This is Newsweek magazine, not me. Here's the patient. Here's the patient. And you can see he's in his hospital gown, barefoot in the hospital, which is probably a no-no. All the germs all over the floor. And so he's saying, no! Now we have this new experimental drug we want to give you. No! We want to give you a CAT scan. No! It's time for, you to go get an enema. No! Now, I'm going to get 2 or 3, other opinions before I let you do something weird to me. That alone will save your life, because you're alerting them that you're not just another piece of baggage that they can just throw around, and so they're going to have to be a little careful with you, right? Now, why is he doing that? I mean, what is he afraid of? Why is this guy terrified? Why is he screaming no in the hospital? Now, here are 8 specialists and surgeons and an anesthesiologist coming at him. Now, do they look like they're there to, as my dad used to say, hip him? No, they're not there to hip him. They're there to get into his insurance policy. They all want a piece of the action now, because they're all hungry, because all the jobs went away. Nobody's got health benefits anymore. So these doctors are now starving to death. And so they're shouldering each other out, competing with each other to get their fingernails into you before the other doctor gets in there. That's what this picture shows you, right? Now, this is not me. This is Newsweek magazine. I just thought that was very profound. Look at those hands. I want your money. I want your insurance money. Give me your credit card. I'll take your credit card. I mean, you go in for help. Even you're unconscious. The first thing you say, they're unconscious. They say, what kind of insurance do you have? Now, here's another problem. We have 80 million baby boomers coming along. Last year, the first 5 million of them hit Social Security. And the reason why we have all these lawmakers scurrying around regardless of policy or party, like cockroaches when you turn the light on, is because they all took all the money out of Social Security. So when Social Security first started, 70 people were supporting one retiree. Today it's one person supporting 70 retirees, and it's unsustainable. What makes it worse is all the elected officials have taken the money out of your Social Security file, and there's no money there anymore. To build bridges to nowhere, to widen highways that have no traffic on them, so they can say, during the re-election thing, I brought home 500 jobs last 4 years, and I want you to vote for me to get me back in. They used your money, your Social Security money, to get those jobs. Okay? So we have a problem. So what is the basic problem here? Why is the medical system collapsing? Why are we in real trouble here? How many remember that 3-way election, presidential election back in 1992? Old Bush 41, Billy Clinton, and Ross Perot. Remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember that. Now I want you to think about this very seriously, because it was a very profound election, because the political football at the time was NAFTA. NAFTA. Some people call it NAFTA-shafta. And the discourse between old Bush 41 and Billy Clinton was how to best use NAFTA to save, America, so we can get more of our products out into the world. That was kind of their concept. Well, Ross Perot, with his big elephant ears and his whiny little Texas accent, well, if anybody signs NAFTA, you're going to hear this giant sucking sound as all the jobs leave America. Has anybody seen that story rewritten or resurfaced or brought up saying, Ross Perot predicted this in 1992 and it's just happened? Now, why did that happen? Well, when they signed that law gave industry permission to get tax breaks for hiring people outside the country. That's what NAFTA did. It gave them permission to get legal tax breaks for hiring people out of this country. And they immediately took all the manufacturing and assembly jobs out of this country because they didn't have to supply medical benefits. That's what NAFTA did. And Ross Perot warned about it, and everybody, oh, he's a nut. Where's American jobs going to go? Well, they went out of this country, as he predicted, in 1992. So we have a huge problem here. No more medical benefits. Doctors are starving now. Doctors are starving. Yep. And here's one of the consequences. They're kicking out Medicare patients. They're not going to take care of Medicare patients anymore. Okay? So they're kicking them out starting January 1st. And also, people who are on fixed income, didn't have any medical care, would go into emergency rooms and they would use the coffee in the emergency room. They walk around the air-conditioned building, you know, during the summertime, and the heated building during the wintertime to get their exercise. If they want to get their blood pressure taken and their blood sugar checked, so they didn't have to buy the kit and pay for the little strips and everything. And the hospital would then send the bill to Medicare and Medicaid, who would pay it. Well, they're broke now because nobody's putting any money in there, and there's only one working person taking care of 70 retirees or on welfare or on unemployment. And so they've cut it down to, instead of 3 days a week, you're able to come to the hospital emergency room. Now you can only do 10 days a year in Florida. In Hawaii. In Florida, it's 45 days. Mississippi is 30 days. Arkansas, 24 days. Alabama, 16 days. Most of the states are falling in 10 to 15 days is the limit. If you want to be in a hospital longer than 10 or 15 days, you got to pay them cash on the front end now. They're not billing anybody. Okay? Baby boomers, again, this came out 2 months ago, September this year. This is an AARP report. 15.6 million baby boomers, 15.6 million baby boomers in the last 2 years went from being middle class to below poverty. They went from a 2-income family to a 1-income family. They went from a 2-income family to a no-income family. There's been 5 million houses foreclosed upon, and people who are good Americans who paid their mortgages until they got laid off. Okay? That's all because of NAFTA allowed these companies to ship the jobs out and get tax breaks for hiring people outside this country. We're the only crazy people who do such things. No other country in the world does this. You all heard of these censuses that get taken every 10 years? We have a census that's done every 10 years. And right now we're the 3rd largest population in the world. China is 1.8 billion people. India is 1.2 billion. And we're 300 million. We're like 1/5 the size of China. I guarantee you the next 10 years we won't be number 3 anymore, because all these third world countries now, with all this economy and new money from all our jobs going over there, guess what? They're being able to buy better food and so forth. They're having more babies. 20 babies per family now. 20 babies per family. You know, 20 different pregnancies. Now, they're not having litters, or, you know. Okay, now, to me, though, the most important piece of that census was this. They said the average black man in America lives to be 62, the average white man in America lives to be 75, and the average Hispanic man lives to be 80.6. Now, wait a minute. All the other surveys said that only wealthy people live the longest. The most educated people live the longest. Well, the Hispanics have 28.6% unemployment. They have the least amount of education of any ethnic group in the United States. They get paid the least. They're willing to take a lot of these jobs and picking stuff in the field for $3 an hour and all that kind of stuff. So none of this fits. So what's going on here? What was discovered is this. Because the blacks have been told incorrectly and fraudulently that all their diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure and arthritis and cancer and obesity is due to genetics, they got the terrible black gene. If you marry the medical system and use our pills and potions and use our surgeries, we'll be able to squeeze a couple more years of life for you out of this terrible black gene. Stick with us and we'll help you. And so they've overused the medical system and been killed more often. By contrast, the Hispanics are still using grandma's home remedies and do not use the medical system. And so they're not killed as often. This is pretty revealing when you think about it. Now, as I told you earlier, cholesterol does not cause any disease. What is the normal blood cholesterol level for human beings? 20, let's see here, it'd be 220 to 270 is normal. 220 to 270 is normal. But every doctor will tell you that's too high because they know you can't get below that with diet and exercise. That'll give them an excuse to write you a prescription for cholesterol-lowering drugs, and then they get a little kickback every time you fulfill a prescription. You don't think they have incentives to do that? Even their staff gets caviar and steaks and all that kind of stuff every Friday. The drug companies come in there and buy the really high-end food for these people and buy them tickets to Disneyland and all that kind of stuff to the staff of the clinics. So they're not completely clean either. Well, this is what causes blocked arteries, not cholesterol. How many of you heard of trans fatty acids? Okay, trans fatty acids as oxidized oils. If you don't know what an oxidized oil is, take an apple of any kind, Gala apple, Granny Smith, you know, whatever. Cut the apple in half, turn the cut surface off, come back in an hour and look at it. What's happened to that pearly white flesh of that apple in that hour? It's turned brown. Everybody knows that. Well, that's the oils in that apple oxidizing and turning brown. Now, you know in an apple there's not much oil. There's 0.0000000000000000000000001% oil. And you can see it with your naked eye oxidizing in just a few moments. Well, every oil you use, even old nuts, you go from a bulk food store and you buy some bulk nuts, you take them home, you taste them, they're kind of old. The oils and the fats in that nut has oxidized, turned into a trans fatty acids. It'll plug your arteries and kill you. Now, in 1971, I wrote the first article on this subject because when you do thousands of autopsies, you can ask the data any question you want, right? So the question I asked was, who or what individuals have the worst plugged arteries? Not from blood clots, but from scar tissue and cholesterol and saturated fat and plaque and that kind of stuff. Vegans or meat eaters? And with special stains to look at cholesterol and saturated fat and scar tissue and calcium, guess who had the worst plugged arteries? Vegans or meat eaters? Vegans! Because they put oil in everything. Olive oil, coconut oil, sesame seed oil, sunflower seed oil, and it all oxidizes, clog their arteries. That's why there's no flourishing colonies of second and third generation vegans. There's no flourishing colonies of vegans with all these rosy cheeked kids running around. It's a political statement, not a good nutritional plan. Now, if you want to be a successful vegan, you got to supplement with the 90 essential nutrients. I have lots of successful vegans who are on my program. These guys are all martial arts guys, are 6'4", 240 pounds, and they can knock this building down without even hitting the building. Just moving their hand, the whole building falls down. These guys, but they've been with me for 25 years supplementing with the 90 essential nutrients. You'll see why that's important even for vegans today. Okay? So it's fried foods, it's processed meats with nitrates, nitrites, oils such as margarines, mayonnaise, salad dressings, cooking oils that clog our arteries. Now, when I was a kid, we didn't have salad dressings. We didn't have any salad dressings. What we did was, for a salad, they didn't pluck the leaves off of things and make a salad out of it. We had a wedge of a head of lettuce or a wedge of a head of cabbage. Some of you may remember that. And my grandmother would take pickled beets and grate them onto that cabbage, that little wedge of cabbage. She'd grate some cheese, right? She'd sprinkle it with some cracked peppercorns, and that's how we ate our salads. That was our salad. There was no such thing as a salad dressing. Well, when the boys came home from Europe in the Second World War, everybody wanted olive oil like they used in Italy and Greece. That's how this began to happen. So what we're doing now is a very short, it's only like 60 years old. It's not like it's been our entire history of human beings. I mean, I guarantee you cavemen didn't have Kraft salad dressing or wishbone salad dressing. They didn't drink olive oil like it was going out of style. They didn't cook in it. It's not only fried chicken, but it's also fried fish. Captain D's is not innocent. Well, my wife and I, and my dear wife is a microsurgeon who taught at Harvard Medical School, and I actually met her at the Texas Medical Center where she was working with DeBakey and Cooley, two great heart transplant surgeons. I met her there, and she and I together over the last 10 years put together this book called Immortality. There's some of those out there in the hall. Immortality. We spent 10 years looking at the top 20 longevity cultures on Earth, trying to find out why they did better than us. Now, the amazing thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, when we did this research, we took the data from National Geographic, we took it from anthropology studies and anthropology journals and big universities, because we didn't want to do it ourselves. It would take 50 years. It would take millions and billions of dollars, and nobody would believe us anyway. So we took the data from these big universities and from the National Geographic, and we credit them for that source of information. But we rearranged it in such a way that you can see a picture now, where before there's just a scattered article here, a scattered article there. We put it all together. What we found out about the top 20 longevity cultures is this. Number one, they're all third world cultures. They're illiterate. They have no access to doctors, clinics, or hospitals. Remember the Hispanics. They don't use the medical system. Okay? They don't have roads. They don't have pharmaceuticals. They don't have private insurance or government insurance. If you looked on a chart, a flow chart, of the places on earth that had everything you'd want for medical care, you would never go to these top 20 places for longevity because they don't have any medical care of any kind. Grandma is the medical care, right? So, there's 25 common threads these people have. They have, first of all, 40 times 100-year-olds we do. They have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. No doctors, they have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. These people have 100-year-old per 250 of their population. According to Harvard Medical School, we have 100-year-old per 10,000. These people live to be an average of 90 in a healthy way. We live to be 75 in a sickly way on the average. So what's going on here? Well, we took the top 5, what we thought was the top 5 of these 25 common threads, and we put them as icons on the cover of the book here. If you understand these 5 things, you'll add 25 to 50 healthful years of your life, and you'll never even have to read the book. So I'm going to explain them to you, because they're that valuable. First of all, how many of you have ever gone to your grandparents' house, your parents' house, and they still had a wood stove? Anybody remember those days when they had wood stoves? What did they do with the ashes every morning? Where did the wood ashes go every morning? They went where? In the garden. They went in the garden. Now, wood ashes are not ashes. That's a misnomer. The wood ashes are actually the minerals that are left when you burn away the carbon in the wood. Sometimes if you pull the damper down and shut off the air supply, the fire will smolder cold during the night, and you might have a little bit of carbon in there. Around the edge it might look black or gray. But pure, quote, wood ashes, unquote, are really just powdered minerals that are left when you burn away the carbon in the wood. Now, these plant minerals would go out in the garden, and the okra and the tomatoes and the onions and garlic and the sweet potatoes and squash and corn and cucumbers and all the other stuff you grow in the garden would suck these minerals up, and you'd eat the vegetables and grains, and you get your minerals in that fashion. Now, how many of you are still eating totally out of your garden, do not go to a grocery store, and you're still putting your wood ashes into your garden? What did you replace that with? Nothing! That's why you're in trouble. And that's why these people have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. Then there's another source of minerals we used to have, and I like to express this to you using an old, ancient Dutch fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. Remember Jack and the Beanstalk? You know it's a Dutch fairy tale when you hear the words. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. How many are still putting bone meal in your bread? Oops, Houston, we have a problem. No more plant minerals, no more bone meal. Bread today is nothing but calories. There's no nutrition in bread anymore. It's just calories. Bread in the old days had minerals from wood ashes and from bone meal. They all get the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. They all get it different ways because they're all different cultures. They have no genetic relationship to each other. We'll go into some details there in a moment. They have calorie-restricted diets. Calorie-restricted diets. They don't know the science behind this because they're all they're illiterate. They haven't read anything on calorie-restricted diets. Yet they all live in a calorie-restricted diet because they're poor. They can only afford 900 calories a day. Now, Americans, according to the Harvard Medical School, consumes anywhere from 2,800 to 3,200 calories a day per person. We're taking in 3 times the calories a day these people do. Then they don't eat any of the bad stuff. No fried foods of any kind, no carbonated drinks, no sugar. Now, it's not that they wouldn't eat those things if they were available. But who's going to build a drive-thru to sell Kentucky Fried Chicken and Mountain Dew when the only thing coming through that drive-thru is going to be some illiterate guy on a donkey? That doesn't work for a drive-thru, okay? So just because it's not available, by default, they don't eat the bad stuff. Lastly, the top 5 of these 25 common threads of these long-lived peoples is they take in 20 times to 50 times the antioxidants we do. How many heard of the super juices like noni, things like acai berry, goji, mangosteen, black New Zealand currant, pomegranate, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, all of these juices and exotic fruits come from these long-lived places, and people say, well, look at that, they're eating that mangosteen, that must be it, that must be their secret. So they bring it here and make it a product, and everybody buy it. And after a couple of years and all their friends have died taking the stuff, they stop taking it. Because there's 25 common threads you have to take together. You just take the super juices by themselves, you add 30 seconds to your life. You need all the other things to make it work. It's kind of like spending $50,000 for a Mercedes and walking out only with a steering wheel and walking from here to New York in the snow and the sleet and the rain and the cold with a steering wheel. Are you going to be comfortable with that? No. I don't think so. Okay, so here's the problem. How many of you heard of resveratrol? Anybody here resveratrol? I can tell this is red wine country. Okay. This is the stuff found in red wine and red grape skin, red grape seeds that is credited with the French long life and the reduced risk of cancer and heart disease and so on, is this resveratrol. There's 200 companies that sell resveratrol products in America because there's 80 million baby boomers who all want to live a long time. It's known as the anti-age substance. So baby boomers are very, very interested in resveratrol. We wanted to get into that market with our program, but we wanted to give people value add. We wanted them to say, well, the only choice we have is Wallach's, right? Because his is different. And so what we did, we looked through these top 20 longevity cultures. In addition to resveratrol, they're all taking in also turmeric and quercetin as spices and things in their food, right? And so we added the turmeric and quercetin to our Cell Shield RTQ, R for resveratrol, T for turmeric, and Q for quercetin. No extra cost. Same price as everybody else's resveratrol alone, but we value added the other two things. Now if you take 2 capsules of all these other resveratrol products per day, you're going to get the amount of resveratrol in 1 6-ounce glass of red wine. That's very respectable because it's only found in red wine in very, very tiny amounts. But we wanted to do, again, value added. We wanted people to say, well, the only one we can take, the only right one is Wallach's. And so, in the same 2 capsules of our resveratrol product, our RTQ, you get the amount of resveratrol, not the amount in 1 glass of 6-ounce glass of red wine, but the amount in 294 glasses of red wine. Same price. So now you're getting turmeric and quercetin plus, instead of 1 glass of red wine per 2 capsules, you're getting 294 glasses of red wine. You don't have to worry about DUIs because there's no alcohol in it. Now I take 6 of those capsules a day. So daily I'm getting the amount of resveratrol you find in 900 glasses of red wine a day. Now why am I doing that? Because politically I cannot die any younger than 300. Because if I were to die at 200, medical doctors would say, well, see, we told you he'd die. He only lived to be 200. He's been taking all those vitamins, minerals all these years and he only lived to be 200. So I have to be a little extreme here. Now, how do you remember Art Linkletter? Anybody here remember Art Linkletter? Now, he died May of last year at 97 years of age. He began taking mixing bowls full of vitamins, minerals, not mine, because mine weren't available back then. But in 1933, he started taking mixing bowls full of vitamins, minerals, because he read a book called Lost Horizon, written by James Hilton. It was kind of a historical novel. Had a lot of truth in it, but he kind of Hollywoodized some of it. And Art read that book, and he got excited about it. How many of you heard of Laetrile or amygdalin, B17? It's kind of like the apricot pit stuff that's one of the alternative things for treating cancer and preventing cancer. Well, it came from the Hunzas in the Hunza Valley of northern Pakistan, right on the Chinese border. And it was one of the things that it was attributing to their long life was this apricot pits that had the amygdalin or Laetrile in it. So he began to eat apricot pits, and he drank the red wine, and he put the wood ashes and minerals into his food and so on. And he died at 97. That's pretty good. And he was lecturing 2 weekends a month until a month before he died. Wow. That's pretty good because he was taking in all these nutrients since 1933. Let's look at a couple more and see how long they lived and why. This little gal here, Margaret Hardy of Irish extract, you know, Hardy, the Hardy Boys novels and so on. This is a picture of her less than 2 years of age. In 2010, she turned 100 years of age. It was a big story in this little magazine from Mesquite, Nevada, because this town of Mesquite, Nevada turned 100 years old at the same time. So it was kind of a nice human interest story. Woman turns 100 years old. She was born on the day that the town was incorporated and so on. And if you go to a nursing home or somebody's home where the relative just turned 100, invariably reporters only get a paragraph of information. They don't like to go out to those things because they feel they're wasting their time. They're not going to get much. They would say, okay, Grandma Hardy, what did you do to live to be 100? And she would say something like, I just keep on breathing. Now, what kind of useful information is that? You're getting nothing. I mean, you know, we have paid her health care for 30 years and that's all we get. She keeps on breathing. That's not much information. Well, because she was born in the northwest corner of Nevada, where they don't have electricity, you know, back 100 years ago, and they didn't have natural gas and propane and so forth, you know, because of European extract, they got a mineral source from two places. One was wood ashes in their food and in their garden. They had bone meal, so you know that, just because that's what the Irish did back in those days. But also, because this is a long birthday announcement, in this paragraph there's very interesting stuff. Her family farmed the typical products grown by others in the valley like pomegranates. She was getting a super juice 100 years ago. We're just discovering that now. So where did those, I mean, pomegranates come from China, so how'd that happen? Well, the Union Pacific Railroad went right through Mesquite, Nevada. And so the Chinese built the railroad from San Francisco to where it met the Irish coming from the East Coast, right? And so it went right through Mesquite, Nevada. And here's these Chinese boys with their right hand driving steel and the left hand they're eating pomegranates. Because Grandma sent them to the United States to earn their fortune and eating pomegranates because they don't know the biochemistry, but the Chinese know that if you eat pomegranates, you're going to live a long time. They've known this for thousands of years. So it's a kind of a long-lived thing. May you live 1,000 years and they give you a basket of pomegranates, right? So she's getting pomegranate juice and pomegranate fruit. She's getting the antioxidants in there. Also, there was enough water there for them to have a vineyard, and they made red wine, which they sold in the various farmers markets, and they also made raisins and sold them commercially. So she's getting resveratrol. She got resveratrol, she got the super juices from the pomegranates, she got her wood ashes and her bone meal. That's why Margaret Hardy lived to be 100, not because she kept on breathing. Now, a medical doctor could read that article and wouldn't see all that in there. He would just find it a kind of a cute little story. But now you know more about anti-aging than medical doctors do. And so you cannot let them take control of your lives because you know more than they do. This is my favorite obituary. It's very, very telling. This gal here, this guy, George Francis, died at 112. In December of 08, when he died, he was the oldest man in America, one of the oldest men in the world. Now, he's illiterate. Here's his daughter reading the newspaper to him. He's a black fellow living out in the swamps, Louisiana. He was living on crawdads and catfish and onions and peppers and all that kind of stuff. No doctors, illiterate. Didn't have a job. He's out there trapping muskrats and things like that, right? And no doctors, no clinics. And he was born in 1896, and he lived through 19 U.S. presidents. He lived through 19 U.S. presidents. Now, remember, every U.S. president had at least one university degree. Many of them had 2 and 3. Very wealthy people, usually. But they had lots of education. The doctors who take care of presidents are not the local country bumpkin doctor. The doctors who take care of presidents are very prestigious. They have 3 or 4 degrees. These people have been heads of departments. They did a lot of research projects. I mean, these are very, very, very well-respected doctors. With all that, the average lifespan of U.S. presidents, taking JFK out, who's assassinated in his 40s, take him out of there, the average lifespan of U.S. presidents is 75. Here's an illiterate swamp rat eating crawdads, not worrying about his cholesterol. He lives to be 112. So it begs the question, what's more important, good medical care, expensive medical care, or raw materials? Raw materials will win. As we go through this, you'll see that raw materials will win every time. Raw materials will win every time. Now, when he died, the reporters asked his daughter, what did your daddy do to live to be 112? And she said, he broke all the rules of healthy eating with a diet heavy on dairy, eggs, and lard sandwiches. For those who don't know what a lard sandwich is, it's made from pig fat. L-A-R-D, pig fat. He ate nothing but dairy, eggs, and pig fat sandwiches, along with his crawdads and onions and garlic and peppers. Now remember, he's a Cajun, he's a Creole. He's eating like the French, who ranked third in longevity. So he's eating like the French. He didn't lower his cholesterol. He stayed away from doctors. He didn't even know there was such a thing as cholesterol. And he lived to be 112. And Ronnie Reagan got Alzheimer's disease, following the doctor's instructions. The longest living person right now is alive today. She's a woman from Indonesia who was born in 1853. She's 157 years old. Everybody in this room, I don't care if everybody in your family has died at 53, you have the genetic capacity to live well beyond 100, but you're going to have to work at it. The ability to live well beyond 100 is only a potential. It's a genetic potential. Human beings can live well beyond 100. But you're not going to accomplish it just doing whatever doctors say. Just eat well, get everything you need. That's not going to work. So let's look at billionaires. They can afford the best doctors. They can hire the entire medical training staff of every medical school in the United States to come in and take a splinter out of their finger, right? Whatever the doctor says, they can hire the best chef, get the best food. So let's see how well billionaires do following the doctor's instructions. Forbes magazine, 2004, came up with a survey. They wanted to know what kills billionaires. They were looking for a BD, a billionaire's disease. What they found out was that billionaires, and they use the word killed, billionaires are killed by the same unglamorous things that kill the rest of us. That's because they use the same doctors we do. The average lifespan of a billionaire, according to this Forbes survey, is 78. The average lifespan of a falling down red wine drunk from Missoula, Montana is 75. You don't gain anything in health and longevity by being a billionaire and having access to information and expensive doctors. There's never been a billionaire who lived to be 100. There has never been a billionaire who lived to be 100. And they can afford the best and most expensive medical care there is. And here's this illiterate swamp rat from Louisiana who lives to be 112. Are you beginning to get a picture? Just like the Hispanics. They live almost 20 years longer than the black people because they don't use doctors. Hello? Well, 7 years later, they redid it because they didn't want to believe that statistic. So Forbes magazine did it again 7 years later. 7 years later, it turns out to be March of this year, March 2011. What they said was, in March of 2011, the average age of billionaires dropped from 78 to 66. The average lifespan of a billionaire dropped 12 years in 7 years following the doctor's instructions. Now, how many of you would go out of your way to seek a doctor for yourself who is bragging that he treats billionaires? I'd chase him off my lawn with a hammer. I'd be sure to get a claw hammer so I can inflict more egregious wounds. Uh-oh, Houston, we have a problem. Steve Jobs, killed at age 56. One of the most wealthy, one of the most intelligent men in the last of the 20th century and the first part of the 21st century. Father of the apple. You know why he called his PC an apple? Because he was a fruitarian at that time. He only ate fruit, lived on fruit for about 2 years. He's a fruitarian. So he named his PC apples for that reason. iPod, iPhone, iPad, I this, I that. He could afford the best. He could get information from anywhere. In seconds, he could get the information. And they kill him at age 56. Now the story was the father of the iPad dies. Oh, what an awful thing. Just kind of like an Andy Rooney story. He passed away. He was killed by a medical system, even though he could afford the best, which is what got him in trouble. If he'd gone to some shaman in the middle of Central America, he'd still be alive. At least they wouldn't kill him. Now think about it. What do you have to give? What drugs do you give somebody when they get an organ transplant, like a liver transplant like he got? You have to have anti-rejection drugs, right? Immunosuppressant drugs. Well, as soon as they did the liver transplant on him, he was dead man walking. Because what is your best friend when you have cancer? Your immune system. Houston, we have a problem. They killed Steve Jobs as sure as the sun comes up every morning. Now my favorite Nobel Prize winner Albert Einstein died at 76 of something that a turkey wouldn't die from. He went to Stanford Medical School for treatment. He was on the Department of Physics there at Stanford University, Northern California. He died of a copper deficiency, which caused a ruptured aortic aneurysm. He bled to death in seconds at age 76. There's about 20 different ways you can die from a copper deficiency, all of which we eliminated in turkeys in 1947, 13 years before he died. Now, the first outward sign of a copper deficiency is white, gray, and silver hair. I see a lot of copper deficiency in his room tonight. Coloring your hair, ladies, doesn't count. It's still white, gray, and silver underneath. You're still at risk. Now, if you don't die suddenly when your hair starts turning gray, it could be 2 years old, doesn't matter of age, it has nothing to do with age. You begin to get a breakdown of the elastic fibers and collagen and connective tissue in your body, and your face looks like you've been run over by a Hummer. Kind of like Albert Einstein there. Now, if he were to go to a plastic surgeon, would he get Botox and a facelift, or would he get copper? He'd get Botox and a facelift, wouldn't he? Well, if you don't die suddenly then, you get a breakdown of the elastic fibers from a copper deficiency and collagen and connective tissue in your blood vessels. You start getting spider veins, varicose veins, and hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are nothing but varicose veins in a funny place. That's all that hemorrhoids are. They're just varicose veins in a funny place. Now, some of you are like me, are old enough to remember those old black and white silent newsreels. They dun dun dun, dun whatever before the movies, you know, in the old days, in the late 40s, right after the Second World War. And I remember seeing pictures of Albert Einstein walking down the halls of Stanford University with an armload of books and papers, you know. Ow, ow, oh, ow, oh, ow, ow, oh, ow, ow. That's because he had, hello? He had hemorrhoids. He had hemorrhoids hanging down to his knees. You can tell by looking at his face. With a face like that, I guarantee you he had hemorrhoids hanging down to his knees. And then he got a breakdown of the elastic fibers in his aorta, and he had a ruptured aortic aneurysm, and he bled to death from a copper deficiency, something a turkey wouldn't die from. Now, by contrast, Linus Pauling, who got 2 Nobel Prizes, his first one of which was for research into the nutrition of enzymes, the nutrition of chromosomes, and the nutrition of genes. You see, a gene won't do anything by itself. It needs nutritional cofactors to work. Even genes need nutrition. So he got his Nobel Prize by laying that out very clearly so everybody can understand it. And during his acceptance speech for his first Nobel Prize, and he had 2 unshared Nobel Prizes, only accomplished by one other person. He said during his acceptance speech for this Nobel Prize for researching the nutrition of genes, chromosomes, and enzymes, he said, you can trace every sickness, every disease, and every ailment to a mineral deficiency. It's very profound when you think about it. Now, he started taking mixing bowls full of vitamins and minerals when he was 20 years old because nutrition was his passion. That's why he studied nutrition of enzymes, chromosomes, and genes. And he lived to be 93. Now, he didn't have access to my stuff, but he took some vitamins and minerals. Now, doctors have credibility, so let's look at doctors and see how long they live. Everybody wants to be a doctor. There's a glass doctor, tree doctor, lawn doctor, right? Right now there's debt doctors.
Yeah.
This is pretty typical doctors. You know that they're doctors because they've got their little plastic name tag with their clinic and hospital name on it. They got their name on it. They got their stethoscope around their neck. I mean, doctors are very insecure. I mean, they won't even have sex without their stethoscope around their neck. They're very insecure. Okay, now you know these doctors are very happy because they've just gotten a new patient. That's why they're smiling. And the patient had good credit line. Well, these doctors will not kill you because they're rug doctors. They're karma. So when you go into that rug store, that carpet store, they're all running around wearing white coats and stethoscopes because immediately you feel, I'm in the right place, I can be healed. They're even specialists. Now these are the ones that will kill you. These are the real thing, the real deal. I mean, you think you're going to get much sympathy from him? I don't think so. He looks like a mortician. He doesn't look like a doctor. Now this came out in February 2005. U.S. News World Report Rated America's most credible print news service. Rated America's most credible print news service. This is not a comic book. This is not me. This is the U.S. News World Report, okay? And in February 2005, they said, special health issue. Who needs doctors? Your future physician might not be a medical doctor. He may be better off. Now, do you think they ran around town, picked up 25 or 30 of these, and made sure that everybody in the waiting room got one? No. I don't think so. I think they went around town, picked them all up so nobody could get at them, right? Now, what the story was talking about, young ladies like this, who's a nurse practitioner, there's physician's assistants, there's chiropractors, there's naturopathic doctors, there's herbalists, there's acupuncturists and Chinese traditional medical doctors that say, at least they won't kill you. Because they had just discovered that doctors kill people, and they were just so mortified they made this a cover article. Your future physician might not be a medical doctor, and you may be better off. Now, how many of you know the CVS Pharmacy and Walmart now are putting these little 1-minute clinics in now? Yep. And they're all being manned by PAs, physician's assistants, and nurse practitioners. There's no doctors involved. Now the mantra is the physician assistant is in, so the doctor is in, right? So the CVS Pharmacy has 1,250 of these. Right now Walmart's has something like 200, and by the end of this year, both of them are going to have several thousand of these little 1-minute clinics. What they do is they give you a lot of free advice, and you walk 3 feet and you get your prescription that they just gave you. No office call. And these are to get all these seniors who don't have access to the emergency rooms anymore because the state's shutting all that down. They can't go in there anymore unless they put up cash in the front end. So all these little old ladies and little old gentlemen who don't have access to medical care are now going to go to CVS Pharmacy and Walmart's. That's a good thing. I don't like drugs very much, but that's a good thing because a PA won't kill them as often as a doctor will. A nurse practitioner won't kill them as often as a doctor will. Also, one of the things we have, and you can make sure you got your name and address and phone number and email out there, we give away free pharmacy discount cards. You can get up to an 85% discount on all pharmaceuticals for your dog and yourself. They never expire. These cards never expire. You get up to a 60% discount for all lab work for your dog and yourself, and a flat 35% discount for hearing aids. The card never expires. You can have everybody in your family, your block, and your church use the same card number. And we give them to you for free. Now you may not, I don't use pharmaceuticals, but and you might not use pharmaceuticals, but I bet you have a granddad or a mom or an auntie or somebody who uses pharmaceuticals, right? Why not give them an 85% discount and ask for your free pharmaceutical discount card? And it's just for showing up here. We're going to be good to you guys. Now let's see how long doctors live. Well, the original audio cassette tape that came out in 1993 was based on a little survey I did on primary care physicians and family doctors. Because I started seeing obituaries in newspapers of doctors, 28 years old, 35 years old, 42 years old. I said, that's really weird. How long do doctors live? So I went to the medical library. I just grabbed a handful of the Journal of the American Medical Association, just got the first 200, even number, first 200 of obituaries, added up the age, divided by 200, got 57.6, rounded up to 58 to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I said, why would anybody want to go to a group of people to learn how to live to be 120 when that group of people only lives to be 58? I mean, everybody was giving their doctors these audio cassette tapes, and doctors were calling me and threatening me with murder. I mean, it was just awful, the things that were going on over that. He said, well, Wallach's lying, that can't be. So they went and did their own study. This is their study. Came out in 1999. Mine came out in 1993. 6 years later, here's what they said. Wallach lied. The average primary care physician and family practitioner does not die at 58 like he says. We die at 56. Now, they're so eager to show that my statistics were incorrect that they didn't care that their statistics showed that they died 2 years younger than I said. And so I'm here to happily apologize to you that I gave them too many years in my survey. Why would you go to anybody for advice on longevity whose average lifespan is 56 according to their own survey? They're dumber than stumps. Okay, pharma's new enemy. Just live clean. No fried foods, no margarines, no cooking oils, absolutely no processed meats with nitrates and nitrites. Take your Mighty 90, the 90 essential nutrients, and the odds are you won't need any pharmaceuticals. Now, I'm 72 chronologically. My biological age is 18. I'm an 18-year-old male athlete, biologically. And I go to all these trade shows, so I go to these booths, I get, my free blood taken this, and I get my blood pressure taken for free, and go into a CVS pharmacy and get it taken for free. My resting pulse is 43. When I really get worked up and angry, it rises very steeply to 45. And then my blood pressure is 121/71, and I've never had a prescription pharmaceutical. Okay, I've not been sick. The first and last time I've ever been to a doctor was when I was 9 years old. The first and last time I've ever been to a doctor, with me being the patient, I've been to a doctor to their funerals, because my wife saves all these obituaries for me. When I go back to Southern California, she's got these stack of obituaries. If they're going to be buried in the next couple of days, I go to the grave site, and I just want to listen to what everybody's saying. I never identify myself as the dead doctors don't lie guy. Okay? Now, back when I first started doing this, 33 years ago, giving 300 free lectures a year, I could get in an airport and a little granny, a little granddad would come up to me with their photo album and say, "You want to see my grandkids? This is little Sherry, and this is little Frankie, and this is Bob and Tom, and this is Ruth. They're going to be this, and they're going to be that, and I just love them to pieces, and here's what they do, and this one plays music," and all that. Well, today, this is what grannies and granddads look like. They say, "You want to see my pharmaceuticals?" I said, "Do you have any grandkids?" "Yeah, I got 5 grandkids." "Can you name them for me?" "Nope." "Can you give me the scientific names of those 27 prescriptions?" "Oh, yeah. This is Flamadiddle Riddle Schmiddle." They give you all the scientific names of all these things. And this guy looks like he's from Houghton Lake, Washington, or Idaho or something. I mean, this is an Idaho guy. This came out in 2006. This is a 2006. This is a annual number. This is a national story, not just a state. Deaths by medication error rising. Now, they're not talking about the side effects of drugs. They're talking about the doctor who wrote the prescription made a mistake. They're talking about the pharmaceutical store, the pharmacist who fulfilled the prescription made a mistake. The person taking the pharmaceutical may have made a mistake. If you're really a bad luck person, all 3 came into play, right? What they said was, each year in America, pharmaceutical medication errors are tied to 1.5 million fatalities and injuries every year. Why on earth would you want to take a pharmaceutical? There's an example: Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Keith Ledger, River Phoenix, and on and on and on. All these famous, wealthy people who could get access to these things and doctors write a prescription get killed by these things because they abuse them. There's more people killed every year. This just came out a couple of days ago. There's more people killed every year from prescription painkillers in America than from street drugs. There's more people every year in America die from prescription painkillers than die from street drugs. We're spending too much money going after the street dealers. We should be going after the doctors! Yeah, one of my favorite CDs that I made is called Dial MD for Murder. Now, those of you who remember the movie Dial M for Murder? I just added 1 letter. Dial MD for Murder. You'll love it because it has all these instances where doctors really do some crazy things that kill people. Yeah, that's one of my favorites, Dial MD for Murder. Okay, let's talk about exercise now. Now, whether you believe it or not, how many of you have heard that exercise is good for you? Now, if you don't raise your hand, you're a lying commie, because I know you've all heard that, right? Now, Jim Fixx came up with the idea that personal fitness was important back in the 1960s, and that if you just ran, you wouldn't even need to take vitamins and minerals. That was his mantra. You look up in the index of this book, The Complete Book of Running, which came out in 1977, you look under vitamins, it says page so-and-so. You go to that page and it says, don't take vitamins and minerals, just run. You look up the word minerals, and there's no word minerals in the index. Well, the New York, was it the newspaper there, the New York Times, actually made this a priority, and they said, look, everybody needs to read this book, so they made it a New York Times bestseller, endorsed this book when it came out in 1977. 5 years later, in 1982, a beautiful September day in Vermont, 50 degrees, sunny, no wind, he's running, getting ready for the Olympics. He's going to run the marathon in the Olympics for us. He drops dead. At the 12-mile mark, bam! I mean, he drops dead. from a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a simple deficiency of the trace mineral selenium. Now, I know that cardiomyopathy heart disease is caused by a trace mineral deficiency called selenium because I'm a veterinarian. Physicians don't know this, so you know more about cardiomyopathy heart disease right now than all medical doctors in America. It's caused by a deficiency of selenium. How do I know that? Well, my wife and I went to China, and through the cooperation of the Chinese government, we did 1,200 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 who died of a cardiomyopathy heart attack. And there's one province that has no selenium in the soil. Now, they give the selenium to all their animals, so they don't die of a cardiomyopathy heart attack, but the kids just eat the food, kind of like the Amish. They just eat food grown there locally, and they die of these cardiomyopathy heart attacks. So we did 1,200 of these autopsies in 6 weeks.
Man.
Now the kids over there now get selenium every day. The teachers give us selenium in school. It stopped it. No more cardiomyopathy heart disease in China. Well, when he died in 1982, September 1982, the New York Times knew that they had made a huge mistake. The Journal of the American Medical Association knew they had made a terrible mistake in endorsing this guy's book. So they came out in October, a month later, with sort of like their due diligence that they should have done before they endorsed his book. The Journal of the American Medical Association, 1982, it was in October 1982. While running, a man's risk of heart attack death increases by a factor of 700%. While running, a man's risk of heart attack death increases by a factor of 700%. So somebody tells you to go out and run and exercise, they're sending you to your death. That sounds kind of rude, but there's a reason for me saying that. You'll see in a moment. Now, you know Ted Kennedy had a daughter named Kara. For 8 years before her death, in September of 2011, she ran 5 miles a day, 7 days a week, and then she'd go to this health club and she'd swim for an hour and cool down and relax and go to the spa and all that kind of stuff. On this fateful day in September 2011, she dies at age 51 from a cardiomyopathy heart attack. Bam! She was dead. Now, do you think the owner of that health food place, that spa, that health club is going to take a sign saying, "We want you to join our health club because Kara worked out here"? No, because everybody says, no, 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 she died there. She died in your health club. She died in your fitness center at age 51. She was a billionaire. There's a reason for this I'm going to tell you in a minute, but I want you to ponder on this for a minute. Are there any sports fans in here? Only a few? Huh. Let me ask it another way. Are there any football fans in here? Okay, that's a little better. Okay. Now, how do you remember in February and March of this year, there was this big thing going on about football players having head injuries and concussions, and they were planning on changing the rules of blocking and tackling, and they would put more padding in the helmet and redesign everything. Remember that? Well, the same thing was going on up in Canada. The sports medicine doctors there, as they were going through all the data, they said, oh my gosh, professional football players only live to be 55 on the average. And so the life insurance company said, wait a minute, we're losing a lot of money then. We need to triple the life insurance premiums for these guys because we figured everything out that they live to be 75 like everybody else. So they refigured it and they said that figure 55 is not correct. You know, the actuaries that crunch the numbers, they said the average football player, both in the United States and Canada, do not live to be 55. They live to be 51. Ah! I'm man! I am football player! Now, I wrestled for the University of Missouri. I only weighed 123 pounds. And in that workout room, in that weight room, were all these big 250, 320-pound football players back, you know, in the day, in the early, in the early 60s, late 50s. And they used to laugh, these football players used to laugh at the bodybuilders in there who were standing in front of the mirror all the time, you know, posing and looking at their muscles, because they had to win these contests, they had to have perfect symmetry, and their right bicep had to be the same size as their left bicep, all that kind of stuff. And they're popping vitamin and mineral pills like crazy. And these big football players are drinking protein drinks and they're drinking Coca-Cola. Ah, we're the real men here. look at those guys weightlifting and taking all them vitamins and minerals. And they died 51, football players, because they live on Gatorade. And here's why. When you exercise or even do physical work, you sweat, don't you? And if somebody loves you, when you leave the house, they say, here, honey, take some water with you so you can rehydrate, right? It's going to be hot outside and you're going to be sweating. Make sure you take plenty of water. Well, that's what kills you. That's what kills you, and here's why. When you sweat, you're not sweating out water, you're sweating out a soup. It contains all 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, and 3 essential fatty acids, and you're replacing that soup with water. If you have a car, ladies and gentlemen, that's burning a quart of oil a week, would you replace that quart of oil with water? No, that engine is going to burn up by the second week. That's what's happening when you're just drinking water. I'm a purist, I just drink water. Bam, you're dead. Because you're sweating out of soup and you have to replace the soup with soup. Now, Reggie Lewis, 28-year-old captain of the Boston Celtics, 1994, they were playing a playoff game against the Charlotte Hornets, today the Charlotte Bobcats. He collapses during the game with a cardiomyopathy heart attack. Didn't die. He survived it. He collapses. He's unconscious. And he was a very wonderful young man, 28 years old, a gentleman. This guy never jumped in the stands and beat up the paying customers. You know, one of the last guys in the NBA who is a gentleman, right? And so the Celtics hired the top 20, let me back that up. They hired the top 12 cardiologists from around the world, the top 12 cardiologists from around the world, and they called it the Dream Team of Cardiology. And they paid them $1 million each to find a heart from an 18-year-old male athlete who had died from a head injury or car wreck, transplant that heart into Reggie, get him back on the court. They're going to give him 10 extra years on the court because they're going to give him a heart from an 18-year-old instead of a 28-year-old, right? Well, while they were arguing who's going to be the captain of this Dream Team of Cardiology to take care of Reggie and be famous for transplanting the heart, he dies of a second cardiomyopathy heart attack because nobody gave him 50 cents a day worth of selenium. Because you see, medical doctors don't know that cardiomyopathy heart disease is a selenium deficiency. Well, the guy who was destined to be the captain of that Dream Team of Cardiology was one Dr. W. Thomas Nessa. Dr. Nessa was the chairman of the Department of Cardiology at Harvard Medical School. He taught medical students cardiology. He taught medical doctors who specialize in cardiology at their continuing education meetings, right? So they could keep their licenses. He ran the Boston Marathon every year for 20 years himself, so he would be doing what he was asking his patients to do, exercise. Also, he was the cardiologist for the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and he was the cardiologist for the Celtics. Well, a year and a half after Reggie died from a cardiomyopathy heart attack, at age 48, Dr. W. Thomas Nessa died of the same cardiomyopathy heart attack. Bam! I mean, he was dead. Now, if I was his family, I'd be embarrassed to tears. This guy had to be dumber than a box of rocks. He's supposed to be the premier cardiologist in the world, and he dies at 48 of a heart attack. And I guarantee that all his patients said, wasn't it terrible that Dr. Nessa died? And then they just kept on doing what he said to do. Now, I don't have a cardiologist. Remember, I told you I don't have doctors, don't take any prescription medications. But if he were my cardiologist and he said, okay, Wallach, you're 72 years old now. I need you to give up salt because I'm worried about your blood pressure. I'd run around Missoula and I'd collect every salt shaker from every restaurant and hotel. I'd leave a $5 bill so I wasn't stealing anything. And I'd take it home. I'd go to every health food store. I'd get every package, bag, bottle, and box of Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, Celtic salt, sea salt. I'd go to every grocery store and get every box and canister of Morton salt with iodine. I'd take it home and I'd build a 2-foot frame around my bed. I'd fill that frame with all this salt. I'd get naked and I'd wiggle around in there until the salt covered me while I slept. I'd have nurses come in at night while I'm asleep and install 3 IVs in each arm with saline solution. I get 3 liters in each arm every night of saline solution with salt water. I wake up in the morning, I'd give myself a salt enema. I'd brush my teeth, wash my hair, and take a bath in salt water. And then on the weekends, I'd run around naked like crazy John the Baptist, throwing salt everywhere to make sure everybody knew the value of salt.
That's right.
And then if he said, eggs are bad for you because of the cholesterol, I'd eat 25 eggs a day. If he said, exercise, I'd go home, I'd lay in that salt bed and I wouldn't even blink because I wouldn't do anything that resembled motion. Because I wouldn't want to wind up like Dr. Nessa. Dead! Dead! Dead!
Dead.
You got it, baby. Okay, now this is a tragic story. This gal here, Ronalda Pierce, 19 years old, 6'5". She could do the Air Jordan thing, and she was courted by every university and every women's professional basketball team in the world. They're all putting millions of dollars into trust funds for her, telling her in the 21st century she was going to be the woman athlete of the 21st century, maybe of all times. She'd be a billionaire because of all her line of clothing and sports equipment and clothing and things like beauty products and so on. And she chose to go with Florida State University for 2 years because she got from them, she got an academic as well as an athletic scholarship. And she said, look, when I'm 21 years old, 2 years down the line, I will have had time to study the franchises, decide which one I'm going to join, right? Well, halfway through her freshman year, still age 19 years old, she drops dead. Bam! She drops dead from ruptured aortic aneurysm from a copper deficiency, just like Albert Einstein. Because you see, well, they say it's genetic because doctors are dumb.
Because she's tall.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, all she had to do was supplement with a mighty 90. But she didn't because she had a personal physician, she had a team physician, she had a team, because of the university they had a nutritionist, personal trainer, and she dies at 19 years of age from a nutritional deficiency because she's sweating out of soup and drinking Gatorade. I mean, who came up with Gatorade? Florida State. And then in March of this year, there was a kid by the name of Wes Leonard from Fenville High School in Michigan, in a semifinals playoff against Holland, Michigan, right on the eastern shores of Lake Michigan. They're having the semifinals game, and at the end of the buzzer, the end of the game, it was 55-55, so prophetically they had to do a sudden death playoff to find out who was going to win to advance to the finals. So he gets the tip-off, takes 10 giant steps down the court, slams dunk the ball in, and they win 57-55 within 10 seconds after him getting the tip-off. Well, this is 3 seconds before he died, this picture. He's facing the camera. His teammates are so excited, they're lifting him up to his shoulders, and before they get him on his shoulders, he falls back dead from a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a simple deficiency of the trace mineral selenium. Now here's what makes me very angry. The medical examiner, the guy who did the autopsy on Wes Leonard, said his death could not be easily explained. Now, he died of a selenium deficiency. He died of a cardiomyopathy heart attack. He died of a selenium deficiency. And this guy doesn't know enough about nutrition, and he's a certified licensed medical examiner, and he doesn't know squat. And because he didn't say on there, if everybody takes selenium, they wouldn't die like this, there'll be another 100,000 kids in America die every year. He had the chance. It was a national story. Well, this is what doctors want you to believe. They could detect the genetic defect if they could only do more electrocardiograms. And this is Wes Leonard again, a couple of days later. Casualty, Fenville, Michigan. Wes Leonard died after game from a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a selenium deficiency. They want more electrocardiograms so they can screen for heart defects that can cause sudden death. You can take an electrocardiogram 3 seconds before you die from a cardiomyopathy heart attack from a selenium deficiency. You won't detect it. It's not detectable with an electrocardiogram. They are dumb. Okay, here's a 16-year-old girl who died of a cardiomyopathy heart attack. It doesn't always be boys. Fremont High School in Los Angeles. She's a cheerleader. I mean, she's the best one. She's doing backflips, running up and down, jumping up and down. Cute little girl. Dies of a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a selenium deficiency, 16 years old. Now, how many of you remember a guy by the name of Jack LaLanne? He wasn't the juice guy. He was not the juice guy. Jay Cordish was the juice man. How many remember Jay Cordish? Big white eyebrows. Jay Cordish was the juice man for 50 years. He sold juicers on TV. He made literally hundreds of millions of dollars selling juice machines on TV. It's only when he retired, Jack LaLanne kind of filled in the last 5 years before he died. He was not the juice man. And he never used the word juice man because Jay Cordish would have sued him, right? Because Jay Cordish was the juice man. Well, he died at 96, January 23rd of this year. Died at 96. He began taking mixing bowls full of vitamins and minerals when he was 12 years old because he wanted to be Mr. America and Mr. Universe. And he accomplished that by age 21. And he took mixing bowls full of vitamins, minerals, not mine, because he started taking them a long time ago, right? Ours weren't available then. And he started taking them every day since he was like 12 years old. Now, what is the common thread between Art Linkletter, Linus Pauling, and Jack LaLanne? They all took vitamins and minerals since they were kids. Now, let's see, the football players died at 51. Hurrah! We're into Gatorade, and Arizona tea, and water. See the difference? You take the Mighty 90, we call it. Some people call it the Almighty 90. 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. Well, how do you get that? Well, we have it out there. It's very simple. I'll show you a little bit here. Very interesting stuff. Got just about, I don't know, a few more slides left. They're going to give away a lot of things. Do the drawing, and then I'll answer questions for you for an hour or so. And this fella here, Theo Ratliff, is the longest playing professional basketball player. The longest playing professional basketball player, Theo Ratliff. I met him when he was playing with the Atlanta Hawks. At age 28, his career was over because he had bone-to-bone arthritis in both knees. The cartilage popped off his right hip, and he had to have it surgically stapled back down. And he was so fragile, he had osteoporosis so bad at age 28, he caught a pass during an NBA official game. It broke his wrist. Just catching a pass from a teammate broke his wrist. So the orthopedic surgeons for the Atlanta Hawks examined him and said his career is over. He can't, he can't take the bump and hit and all that kind of bump and run in professional basketball. So his career is over. Well, a mutual friend introduced us, and we rebuilt him with our Mighty 90, the Almighty 90, in 90 days. And we built a sports drink for him, which we sell a lot of because people love it. Tastes good. We have 4 different flavors. And it has 100 nutrients in it. Gatorade has 2. Ours has 100 nutrients in it. Same price per serving. Ours has 100 nutrients. Theirs has 2. Okay? They do not have copper and selenium in there. Ours has copper and selenium plus the other 98 nutrients. All right? Comes in a liquid concentrate, comes in powder, in a big canister. It comes in individual servings, tear off the top, pour in a bottle. All right? Well, since his career is over and I rebuilt him, he's made $140 million in contracts since the orthopedic surgeons told him his career was over. Now, do you think his wife, Christina, loves me? She loves me! $140 million worth. Now, anybody here have a dog? Anybody have a dog? Okay, I'm going to go with this lady here. Now, what's your dog's name?
Gretel.
Gretel. Must be a girl.
Yeah.
Now, is she a dachshund?
She's a St. Bernard.
A St. Bernard? Why? Huh?
We live in Montana.
Oh, you live in Montana. Okay. Okay, so you have the St. Bernard.
Yeah.
Now, do you feed this Gretel St. Bernard? How old is Gretel?
Believe it or not, she's 12.
That's very good. No, I do believe it. So you already kind of partially answered my question here. She's 12 years old. Now, do you feed Gretel garbage and table scraps, or do you feed her dog food?
No, she gets Nutri-Nuggets.
She gets Nutri-Nuggets. Very good. And that's why she's 12 years old. Now, we spent $120 million. No, let me change it. We spent $120 billion over the last 100 years perfecting dog food. We've tripled the lifespan of dogs. 60 years ago, an old dog was 8 years old. Today, an old dog is 25. We didn't do that with wonder drugs and organ transplants and stem cells and genetically engineered protein. We did it with Nutri-Chunks or whatever you call them, right? Okay? Now, why did you feed Gretel this, what is it, Nutri-Nuggets. Nutri-Nuggets, okay. Why did you feed Gretel Nutri-Nuggets? I mean, that's a big dog. So why don't you just give Gretel garbage and table scraps? What would happen to Gretel?
Her brother was allergic to corn, and Nutri-Nuggets doesn't have any corn in it.
Okay, so that's a good reason. Okay, but also, realistically, do you think Gretel would live to be 12 years old as she is now, just feeding her table scraps? No, probably not. She'd probably die of some weird thing, right? And why would you just give a dog table scraps when you don't know what's in it? And well, you have a dog food. And now, also, do you use a dog food meant for giant breeds, or do you just take the $5 bag?
No, it's Nutri-Nuggets.
Okay, well, what you want to do is see if...
She has a dog feeder that's kind of like a rabbit feeder, so she can eat anytime she wants.
Yeah, but what I want you to understand is If she's getting generic dog food that's designed for a 50-pound dog, she will not live to be 25. Because there's dog food for toy dogs under 10 pounds. There's dog food for dogs that weigh 30 to 50 pounds. There's dog food for large breeds like German Shepherds and Labs. And then there's dog food for giant breeds like St. Bernards and Great Danes. Okay? So I would urge you to get, if NutriNuggets has a formulation for giant breeds, I would move over to the one formulated for giant breeds. All right? Now, a little dog, like a Yorkie, could not eat the dog food that Gretel's eating because she can't eat enough to get all the nutrients she needs. That's why the little dogs, their teeth tend to fall out and they get all the heart disease and all this kind of stuff, because they can't get enough nutrition for dog food designed for a 50-pound dog. That's why they make dog food for toy dogs under 10 pounds, because there's more nutrients per pound to feed. They do it by body weight instead of just dog food. All right, now here comes the ultimate question. What's your name, ma'am?
I'm Judy.
Judy. Judy. Okay, Judy. I'm only going to give money to Judy's. Now you changed your name back, didn't you? Okay. So here's the ultimate question, Judy. Why do we humans eat dog food? Why don't we eat dog food? Why do we eat food that will kill a dog? Why do we eat food that will kill a dog? We make sure a dog gets dog food that's better for him instead of our food.
I don't like the taste of what she eats.
Well, you're very smart. Well, I'm going to send you some A1 sauce to put on it. Okay. But you get the picture here, don't you? We eat food that will kill a dog. We eat food that will kill a dog. We love our dog so much. We eat the food that will kill a dog, and we give the food that will kill a dog to our kids. That's why our kids are not going to live as long as us. Now, pay attention here, because here comes the bottom lines. You've been sitting here very patiently, and you've been learning some stuff, but here it comes. There's about 6 or 7 slides left, and you're going to know more than doctors know at the end of this thing, which doesn't take much. Okay. There's 90 essential nutrients required by all vertebrates. It doesn't matter if you're a hummingbird, an elephant, a snake, or a human being, or a monkey, or a turtle. It doesn't matter. A salamander. If you're a vertebrate, you need the 90 essential nutrients. They're called essential nutrients, ladies and gentlemen, for 2 reasons. Number 1, we cannot make these things. We must consume them every day, either as food or as supplements. Right? Number 2, if they're missing for any length of time, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, you get horrible diseases, many of which are life-threatening. We need 60 minerals, and you see there's 2 asterisks there because minerals make up 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients, so you know that's very important. So we need 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. Plants cannot manufacture minerals. Plants take carbon dioxide out of the air, use the sun's energy in a process known as photosynthesis to split the O2 off, pump it out in the environment so we can breathe, make chains out of the carbons, and they make vitamins, amino acids, and fatty acids. These 3 food groups are carbon chains, and plants can make these. But does an orange make all these things in proper ratios? No, an orange makes some vitamin C, a little bit of sugar. That's what oranges make. So, also you notice there's no carbohydrates or sugars in here as essential nutrients, because we can make, one of the definitions of an essential nutrient is you can't make it. We can make all the sugars and carbohydrates we need from proteins and fats. So carbohydrates and sugars are not essential nutrients. You do not need to eat them. And then you'll be able to cut your calories in half and double your lifespan. You do not need to eat sugar and carbohydrates. They're not essential nutrients. Now, as I said, plants cannot make minerals, and plants only need 3 nutrients, 1 element and 2 minerals, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, to give the farmer the maximum yields in terms of tons and bushels per acre, and to make good seeds for the next generation. We need 60. So if you're eating a pretty good slice of organically grown, multigrain bread, you're 57 short, because you're not putting wood ashes and bone meal in your bread anymore. That's the problem. So you have to supplement. Now in dogs, we don't care what nutrition's in the food. We put everything in there nutritionally they need, and then whatever value they get from the food is value added. We don't depend on it. Now nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ripple ice cream. Now think about that, what that means. Now in our national anthem, we have a phrase in there, amber waves of grain. Now, to me, this is very exciting. When you see something like this, you know, I'm a farm kid, and you see this, just warms your heart, because we're a farming nation. Our founding fathers were all farmers. The guys who came up with the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, were all farmers. There's not a single farmer in our federal government anymore. They're all lawyers. That's one of the reasons why we're in trouble. There's no farmers there, right? And so we have huge problems here now. But on the other hand, we take care of the world. We feed. You look at this, you say, my gosh, we can feed the world. But there's a problem with this, because just in general, you know that nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. Plants only need 3, so you know there's at least 3 nutrients here. And so let's say that this row here has 3 minerals in it. This row over here has 22. This row has 3. This row has 16. This row has 8. This row over here has 17. It depends on which row in the field that your grain came from, how many minerals are in it. It gets worse than that. This is a satellite picture of farmland, agricultural land in Southern California, just south of the Salton Sea, which is a small version of the Great Salt Lake. This is the Salton Sea from 100 miles up, satellite picture. And the stubble in these fields has been burnt at the end of the growing season, the end of the harvest season. Now I want you to look at the veins in this soil here. It's red over here. There's some pink here. There's some black. There's some sort of cream color stuff. And then there's, I don't know what you call this, almost like a pewter color. There's yellow and orange, and there's gold. And then there's pink stuff again. And there's this pewter stuff again. Then there's gray, battleship gray, and there's pink and yellow and orange and gold. Now remember what I told you. The amount of minerals and variety of minerals in these different veins is highly different. It's not the same. So if you grow a tomato in each one of these different color zones, it's not going to have the same mineral nutrition in it. It's not going to have the same vitamin, amino acids, and fatty acid nutrition in it, because plants need these mineral raw materials to make the other stuff as cofactors, right? And so there's only one way you can level the playing field, because you go to a farmer's market and you get a tomato, beautiful looking beefsteak tomato, tastes good, but you have no earthly idea how many minerals are in there. Now, Nutri-Nuggets, that's what Gretel gets. Okay, Nutri-Nuggets. Nutri-Nuggets being eaten by a dog in every major city in the United States will get exactly the same perfect diet. By contrast, if you go to a farmer's market just outside those cities and you're eating bread made from local grain, there's no 2 loaves of bread in America that are going to be the same when it comes to the nutritional minerals in there. There's only one way that you're going to level the playing field so that your diet is perfect, and better yet, more importantly, the diet of your kids and grandkids is more perfect. You have to supplement. Now this is what makes us different. This is an ancient plant compost. This is not rock. This beige brown material here. You stick your hand in there, it's like coffee grounds. It looks like coffee grounds. Has the same consistency as coffee grounds. You can run it through a spreader. We sell liquid for foliar feeding for gardens and big, large farm enterprises. But this is where we get our minerals for animals and people. Okay, this has 77 certified organic plant minerals in it. It's been certified organic every year for 35 years. Nobody else has this. This is the core of all of our programs for the 900 different diseases we can treat, we can prevent, we can reverse. This is what makes us different. Now you get a 1-a-day multiple, like 1-a-day Centrum Silver for women, Centrum Silver for men. That may have 28 to 32 nutrients in there, not 90. The minerals might only have 12 instead of 60. And do they have 100% of each one of those minerals? No, they have 20% of the minimum daily requirement. 20% of the minimum daily requirement, 5% of the minimum daily requirement, 2% of the minimum daily requirement. Because they're assuming that there's something in the food you're eating. Well, that's backwards. You should assume there's nothing in there. And then you supplement properly, and then everything that is in the food is just value added. They got it backwards. We treat our dogs better than we treat our kids. We're in big trouble as a result. And of course, shame on the doctors, because they encourage all that kind of stuff. Now, I also have doctors who would say, you probably heard this yourself, oh, Wallach, come on, there's no evidence you can prevent and cure disease like with vitamins and minerals. We believe in science, things that have been proven. There's no proof that you can cure and prevent disease with vitamins and minerals. How many of you heard or read stuff like that from doctors? They say that all the time. Evidence-based medicine. We're for evidence-based medicine. That's what they say now. That's the modern version of it. Well, how many of you know that you can prevent and cure scurvy with vitamin C? Raise your hand. We've known that since 1721. How many of you know you can prevent and cure rickets with vitamin D? Raise your hand. Now, doctors are the ones who made vitamin D deficiency occur in every human being in America. It's a physician-caused disease that every one of us in America is vitamin D3 deficient. Don't you dare go out in the sun. If you do, you got to have skin blocker SPF 7 billion. You have to wear long sleeves, gloves, and a big brim hat. Don't go out in the moonlight. You'll get skin cancer. You cannot eat eggs because that yolk will get you from cholesterol. And then don't you dare take any vitamins and minerals. You'll overdose. Now they charge you $300 to do a vitamin D3 test, and then you write your prescription for $150 for something you can get for free for just standing out in the sun for a half hour. And they think you're doing a favor when they caused everybody in America to be vitamin D3 deficient. You all heard of the 7 food group pyramid, which is kind of funny because the doctors and the government's not stupid. So they see us getting sicker and sicker, dying younger and younger, and all these terrible things happening. They say, well, it must be that the 7 food group pyramid is too complicated for Americans. I mean, it's 7. So they've now squished it down to a flat 4 food group plate because 7 is too complicated for you. Well, that's what they say. The pyramid was toppled for a 4 food group plate now because this is less complicated. 7 is too big a number for you. That's what they're saying. Now, doctors want you to believe, the government wants you to believe this would be a good meal. You got some vegetables there. You got broccoli, cauliflower, carrots. You know that broccoli is green, so you got some magnesium in there because it requires magnesium to make chlorophyll. So you know that it's got some magnesium in there. You know there's 2 other minerals. You don't know what they are, but you got some 2 other minerals. You got cauliflower. You don't know what's in there. And carrots, you got some beta-carotene, which is kind of a pre-vitamin A. And then you got the raspberries and the blueberries, which have some nice antioxidants. And then, of course, there's cantaloupe. I wouldn't eat that because you get listeria and die. And then you have a piece of chicken breast here, which has some amino acids in it, but it's dangerous because it's got some burned areas in the fat, which turn into heterocyclamines and cause cancer. And then you have too much carbohydrates, which is not an essential nutrient. If you're not cutting trees and plowing with your plow without an engine pulling it, you're just pushing the plow yourself, you don't need that much calories from carbohydrates. Okay? So you got a little bit of antioxidants. How many ORAC points in there? You don't know. You know you need 20,000 to live a long time like these long-lived people, but how many's in there? You don't know. So how can you eat like that and guarantee that you're getting everything you need in optimal amounts? There's only one way, ladies and gentlemen. You must supplement. You must supplement with the almighty 90. You must supplement with the almighty 90. 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. And people tell me, well, I can't do that. $2 a day is too much. And then they're standing there with a cup of Starbucks coffee, espresso, latte, mocha, smocha, choca, gloca, goka, for $8. Now, there's 2 problems with that attitude. Number one, if you die 50 years early or 25 years early, you're cheating your grandkids of your wisdom. Keep them out of trouble and steer them in the right direction, right? You're going to leave them to some government guy? Think about that. Or worse yet, your kid's going to die 25 to 50 years early and you'll be burying them because you wouldn't give them the vitamins and minerals. Do not listen to doctors when it comes to nutrition. They know nothing. I'm going to give you a couple of diseases that are physician-produced diseases, physician-caused diseases, and then we'll call this quits here. And then we'll bring in the giveaways, which everybody likes. How many of you heard of Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is a physician-caused disease. I'll repeat that. Alzheimer's disease is a physician-caused disease. Alzheimer's disease is a physician-caused disease. Alzheimer's disease is a physician-caused disease. Is there anybody that did not hear me here? Raise your hand. Okay. The reason I can say that is this. Alzheimer's disease did not occur 40 years ago, even by another name. Now it's the number 4 killer of adults in the United States over the age of 65. Now what is Alzheimer's disease? Well, it's the going away of the myelin, the insulation material in the brain, the white matter of the brain, which makes up 75% of the brain weight. When the myelin goes away and you don't have enough raw materials to replace it, these naked nerve fibers get all tangled up. You've all heard of the nerve tangles, right, in the myelin. They short circuit and your memory doesn't work. That's what Alzheimer's is. Well, this myelin in the brain that makes up 75% of your brain weight is 100% cholesterol. So you go on a cholesterol restricted diet, you're eating egg beaters instead of eggs, you're eating egg white omelets, you're eating margarine and canola oil instead of cream and butter and lard and eggs, and you're eating tofu instead of red meat, you're eating boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Now how they grow chickens without skin, I don't know, but they figured that one out. You're better off throwing away the chicken and eating the skin. Then if you can't get your blood cholesterol below 200, normal, remember, is 220, 270. If you can't get your blood cholesterol below 200, they give you cholesterol-lowering drugs. And then you can't remember who you are because you have Alzheimer's disease. Now, because you can't rebuild the myelin in the brain. Now, how many of you have heard of erectile dysfunction, ED? I mean, all you have to do is watch TV every night after 10 o'clock at night, right? Here's Bob selling Enzyte. And then there's Cialis. You got two people in two different bathtubs waiting for the right moment. I mean, these people are dumber than rocks because you have to be in the same bathtub before there's the right moment. I mean, they don't know anything about the birds and the bees. And then there's Viagra. If you have the side effect of an erection for 48 hours, contact us. Well, if that isn't an incentive, give me the side effect, man. So why do we have erectile dysfunction? Well, erectile dysfunction is caused by a lack of the production of testosterone, the male hormone. No male hormone, there's nobody home anymore, right? I mean, this is not difficult. Well, testosterone is a steroid hormone. It's 95% by weight cholesterol. So you go on a cholesterol-restricted diet, you cholesterol-lowering drugs, there ain't nobody home anymore. So you want screaming in the neighborhood again? You got to eat 6 to 8 eggs a day, folks. You take the Mighty 90 and 6 to 8 eggs a day, and there'll be hallelujah holiday again, boy, let me tell you. And then, of course, menopause. You ladies don't get off easy. Menopause is also a physician-caused disease. I want you to think about it. Progesterone and estrogen are two steroid hormones. All you got to do is eat 6 to 8 eggs a day, ladies. Take the Mighty 90, and you won't have any problems. You won't need Premarin, which is horse pee. I don't know if you know this, but horse pee, it's mare's pee. Okay, it's mare's pee, it was more correct, that they make Premarin from. Oh. That's a wonderful, fun thing. You ever wonder why you whinny every time now? It comes from the horse pee. Now, your grandma used to go through menopause in 3 seconds when she was 70 years old. She was having pregnancies in her 60s, right? Now, half our young women's life, I mean, 30 years you're suffering from menopause and go through 5 husbands and you know, all the symptoms and everything. The symptoms are so terrible you're willing to take drugs that'll make you have cancer and everything just to get rid of the hot flashes. Okay, then there's sleep apnea. How many have heard of sleep apnea? That's another physician-caused disease. Now, sleep apnea is a normal behavior. And I'm going to repeat that again. Sleep apnea is a normal behavior. Anybody who's alive has sleep apnea. Watch a dog sleep, watch a baby sleep. They'll breathe for about 10-15 minutes and then they slowly stop breathing and they'll quit breathing for about 2 minutes until their carbon dioxide levels raise above a certain line. They'll take a deep breath and start breathing again. As they're blowing off all the carbon dioxide, when the carbon dioxide goes below a certain line, they stop breathing. Comes up above the line, they take a deep breath and start breathing again. It's a normal sleep behavior. So everybody they send to the sleep lab is 100% going to have sleep apnea because it's a normal behavior. Then they say one of these stupid one of the CPAP machines, you sound like Darth Vader. Oh, that's romantic. That'll knock the population down. And then we have, let's see, what is it? Oh, snoring. Snoring's supposed to cause heart attacks. I mean, come on. Snoring causes heart attacks? No. But doctors say, oh, well, we got to do surgery. We got to give you Ambien with lunar moths flying around. I mean, this is really weird stuff. You're snoring. Well, how did Grandma and Grandpa deal with it? They slept in separate bedrooms. It was free. Nobody died. They just slept in separate bedrooms. Now, the only time you're going to die from snoring is when your sleep partner hits you in the head with a pot. Now, when they wanted to get frisky, Grandma or Grandpa would put a blue thumbtack above the eyes of the kids. Grandpa, and the little kid would say, Grandpa, why are you so happy today? He says, son, when you grow up, you'll find out. Okay, you're getting the idea. So many of these things we suffer from today are physician-caused diseases. And then we pay them to fix the disease they cause. It's like you go to a guy to change the oil, and he takes your brake pads off. You say, man, my brakes are squeaking. They're not very good. You go back and you say, oh, I got to replace your brake pads. That's what doctors do. You see, because they game the system. Remember the Senate committee came out just a couple of months ago and said doctors are gaming the system now? They do it every day to every one of you. So you got to stop using them, except for emergencies. You're unconscious, even in your sleep. Your prayer should be, I hope the doctor is sober when I get there. But other than an emergency, if you've been run over by a truck or fall off a roof, do not go to a doctor. Take care of yourself first. Ask Grandma. Okay? Do not go to them for every little thing. Just ask Andy Rooney. Okay? So with that, I'm going to get Vivian and Jerry and whoever's coming up here. They're going to give away a bunch of stuff. And here they come. Let's give them a hand. They're going to give you away a lot of things. And then I'll come back and answer questions for you, and we'll have a lot of fun. We'll save a lot of kids. That's the main goal here.
Let's give Dr. Wallach a hand.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.